Good evening. This is the Design Review Commission meeting for Monday, June 26, 2023. I am now calling the meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. Commissioner Sala, Vice Chair, will you do our Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, will you please call the meeting and do the roll call?
Chair Romo,
Here.
Vice Chair Salo,
Here?
Commissioner Chang,
Present.
Commissioner Lopez,
Here.
and Commissioner Tu.
Commissioner Tu is absent this evening.
Thank you.
Tonight's meeting is live streamed on Cable Channel 3 and on our online platforms. To prevent any overlaps in comment, each commissioner will be asked upon to speak, one at a time. Public comment. This is a time set aside for members of the public to address the Design Review Commission on items of interest that are not on today's agenda, but are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Commission. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the Design Review Commission cannot answer any questions or take any action until such time as the matter may appear on a future agenda. If you wish to address the Design Commission, please fill out a speaker card that is available on the back table. Once completed, kindly submit the card to the recording secretary. Speakers will be called upon to the podium one by one. Each speaker will be given up to 3 minutes to speak. Any public comment? Okay, we'll go to the next item. Consent calendar. All items under consent calendar are considered routine and recommendations. Will be approved in one motion unless a member of the Design Review Commission or public request separate discussion. Vice Chair Sala,
No comment.
Commissioner Lopez,
No comment.
Commissioner Chang.
No problem. No comment.
Okay. Jackie, have we received any requests from the public on this matter?
No, we have not.
Then the next thing is there approval of the minutes, which is basically the consent calendar? Can I get a motion?
I motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you.
I second.
Thank you.
Roll call vote. Chair Romo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Salo,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez,
Yes.
and Commissioner Tu is absent. So the vote is 4-0, motion passed.
Thank you, Jackie. All right. Now it's our time for public hearing, and I'm going to turn it over to staff.
Yes, thank you, Chair Bromo and members of the Design Review Commission. Good evening, and thank you for participating in tonight's Design Review meeting. My name is Samantha Tiwasar, Planning Manager with the Community Development Department. There are 5 public hearing items tonight. The items on the agenda are available on the city's website at www.sangabrielcity.com and also on the table by the entrance. And as mentioned by the chair, if you wish to speak on an item this evening and you are not the project applicant, please fill out a speaker card and submit the card to the recording secretary. And those cards are also available on the back table. Please write down the item number that you would like to speak on, and speakers will be called up one by one to the podium during the public hearing portion of each item, and each speaker will be given up to 3 minutes to speak. Any decision made by the Design Review Commission this evening is appealable to the City Council, and the deadline for filing an appeal application is Monday, July 10th. Otherwise, the decision made this evening is effective on Tuesday, July 11th. And if you wish to appeal an item, please contact the project planner for the appropriate application and fees. For each item this evening, staff will provide a summary of the staff report, followed by a presentation from the applicant, if the applicant does have one. And after the public comments, the applicant is provided the opportunity to rebut if they choose. And prior to the close of the public hearing, the commission may ask questions of the applicant, staff, or the city architect. However, once the public hearing is closed, the opportunity for public comment will end. And with that, Madam Chair, at this time, staff is ready to present item A.
Great. Item A is 1649 Euclid Avenue, planning case number SPR 21134, site plan review. Applicant, B.B. Wynn. Presentation will be made by Associate Planner Anthony Alvarado. Anthony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. The first item before you tonight is for a site plan review to propose a second-story addition to an existing single-family residence located at the address 1649 Euclid Avenue, planning case number SPR 21-134. The project site is located on the west side of Euclid Avenue between the streets of Valley Boulevard to the north and Dewey Avenue to the south. The 8,213 square foot lot is currently developed with a 1,396 square foot, one-story single-family residence and a detached garage. The property is neighbored by R1 properties on the northeast, south, and west of the subject site, and all four have a single-family residence on their property. This slide shows an image of the existing house as is. The property is zoned R1 for single-family residential and has a general land use designation of low-density residential. On the April 24th, 2023 DRC meeting, the DRC originally considered the proposed project at a duly noticed public hearing. However, the item was continued to a date uncertain due to the following. Just going down the list, the commission had requested to clearly label compliance with the side setback requirements, as well as showing compliance with the front and rear yard angle requirements per the San Gabriel Municipal Code, section 153.040. More information regarding the landscaping. The applicant is proposing to keep a majority of the landscaping as is on site, but more information was requested pertaining to that existing landscaping. A request to have a building section of the proposed project, as well as addressing some of the other plan inconsistencies. So as a result, the applicant has addressed those items. The applicant resubmitted to the city staff, and both city staff and the city architect looked over these items. Just to kind of go down those as well. The applicant has shown on the elevation sheet A-5.1 that both 10-foot side setback requirements are met. The front and rear angle requirements per section 153.040 are shown on sheet A-5.2. Landscaping is shown as seen on the image above on the proposed site plan. Building sections were included on sheet A-6, and the applicant worked with the city architect to address some of those minor drafting errors that were in the previous iteration. So this image shows a perspective street view of the proposed project. The proposed project is to remodel the existing one-story single-family residence while adding a new two-story, approximately 545 square feet in size, totaling a project or a residence that would be 2,420 square feet. The project was reviewed against the R1 development standards and found to be consistent in meeting all of the development standards. As a part of a project that requires DRC approval for a single-family home, whether it's a new house or a second-story addition, a neighborhood analysis is required. For this neighborhood analysis, we have to show the project site measuring out 300-foot radius and show how many single-family residences have a two-story residence within that radius. With that analysis, which was provided as part of the packet tonight, it does show that there are 6 single-family properties with a two-story residence. The project was reviewed against the general plan and found to be consistent with the following goals, which are Housing Goal A, Community Design Goal 10.1, and Community Design Goal 10.3. The project was found to be categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, per guideline section 15303, class 3 for new construction or conversion of small structures. And since this project was continued to a date uncertain at the April DRC meeting, noticing was required once again for tonight's meeting and was conducted in the following ways: by having notices sent out to the property owners within that 300-foot radius, having a notice posted at the project site, as well as having a notice posted in the San Gabriel Sun newspaper. The agenda for tonight's meeting was posted in front of City Hall, the San Gabriel Post Office, San Gabriel Library, and on our city's website. And it is with that staff recommends that the Design Review Commission adopt a resolution of the Design Review Commission of the City of San Gabriel, California, approving planning case number SPR 21-134 for a new second-story addition to an existing single-family residence at the address 1649 Euclid Avenue, subject to the recommended conditions of approval. This will conclude staff's presentation. Staff is available for any questions. We also have the applicant here as well to answer any questions that the commission might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Are there any clarifying questions from the commission staff? To Anthony. Vice Chair Sela?
No questions for staff.
Commissioner Lopez?
No questions.
Commissioner Chin?
Yes, I do have two simple quick questions for staff. They are replacing the entire roof system, and all windows are being replaced, proposed. I just want to have that on the record.
Yes, I believe that is all part of the scope, but the applicant can confirm that when she comes up.
Thank you. We can
That's
ask
it?
the applicant.
All right, thank you. At this, I don't have any questions at this point. So the applicant, can you please come up?
Hello, Commissioner members. I'm Vivi Wong. I'm here to answer your questions. Oh, I'm Vivi Wong. I'm here to answer the questions. Yeah. Good night.
All right, we'll go around one by one. Vice Chair Sela?
No questions for the applicant.
Commissioner Lopez?
No questions for applicant.
Commissioner Chin?
Yeah, just one quick question. I want to know if you are proposing to replace the upper and the lower roof together.
Yes.
You are? Okay, good. And then you're going to be replacing all the window listed in the window schedule.
Yes,
It's all
exactly.
new windows, right?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I need to know for the record. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I also have a question. for
Yes.
you. It's regarding the lawn area. I see that it's listed that the front lawn is going to remain, and there's also a parkway there. So are you going to do any work on the lawn?
You mean the driveway?
On the parkway, which
The-
is basically, you know, where the city tree is? That section there is called a parkway,
Yes.
where it says existing city parkway tree.
Mm-hmm.
There's lawn right there, and there's lawn in front and on the side. So are you going to do anything to that lawn?
Oh, we're not, because right now it already have the existing concrete driveway here. So we'll keep the existing looking for this one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for the applicant? No? All right. Then it is now 6:49 PM, and the time for public comment on this item is now closed. Is there does staff have any additional comments on this project?
Madam Chair, if we can open public comments and then see if there's any comments from the audience and then close.
Then I'm going to reopen the public comments section right now at 6:50 PM for any comments from the general public. Any comments from the general public? No. Okay, so I'm going to close the public comment section at this time. It is now, and close the public hearing at 6:50. And we'll go from there. So it is time for a vote. Is there someone on the commission who would like to make a motion on this item?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Salo. Reviewing the recent drawings, looks like the comments have been addressed from the last time we saw this project. So I motion to approve case number SPR 21-134.
Thank you.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Chair Romo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Salo,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and Commissioner Lopez.
Yes.
The vote is 4-0, motion passed.
Great. Thank you very much. Congratulations. You can move on with your project.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Okay. So our next item is B, 1526 Stevens Avenue, planning case number PPD 17-005. Precise plan of design applicant is Eric Singh. Presentation will be made by Anthony again.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So the second item before the commission tonight is for a proposed precise plan of design at the address 1526 Stevens Avenue, planning case number PPD 17-005. The project site is located along the east side of Stevens Avenue between South New Avenue and Prospect Avenue. The property is bordered by multifamily residences on all sides, and currently there is a single-family home on the proposed property, a duplex, and a detached garage. All will be demolished in lieu of the construction of the proposed project. And I do apologize, I think I accidentally said New Avenue, I meant Newby Avenue. The subject site is located in the RNC zone for residential neighborhood conservation within the Valley Boulevard specific plan. It has a underlining zone of R3, so the R3 development standards would apply for the proposed project. The general plan has the land use designation of this subject site of high-density residential. So this project was submitted in 2017. It's been around for a little while. At that time, the application was for a precise plan of design that would allow for a 5-unit apartment development. And that project was actually brought forth at the June 28th, 2021 Design Review Commission meeting. At that time, the proposed precise plan of design was considered by the DRC, but due to concerns that were brought up by the commission, the item was continued to a date uncertain. So talking with the applicant, the project owner decided to bring on a new architect who revised the scope, and in doing so, revised it to go from apartments to condominiums instead. And as a result of that, a tentative track map was required for the proposed project. At the Planning Commission meeting on May 8th, 2023, the Planning Commission voted to approve the proposed tentative track map to allow the subdivision of the 5 units so that they would each be allowed to be sold separately. So above is an image of the proposed site plan. As you can see, there are still the 5 units as proposed. One of the new items, and I'll get into this in a couple slides, you can see Unit D is labeled as moderate income. That is because that, as a part of this proposed project, an affordable housing component was added to the scope of work. As I said, that's going to be something that we touch base on a little bit in a couple slides. So the proposed project meets the R3 development standards as shown on the table above. So the column to the left, or actually in the middle, are the R3 development standards as mentioned in the code. And to the right is how the proposed project meets those items. You will see on the side and rear setbacks, those do not meet for the basement level. And the reason for that is because the applicant is requesting incentives for that, or has requested incentives for those items. Being that this is a semi-subterranean project, some of the basement garage portion does extrude beyond the ground floor, which would impede on that setback requirement. However, per California Government Code Section 65915, it allows a development that is providing 20% affordable units at a moderate income to request at least 2 incentives, or at a maximum of 2 incentives that could be used for the proposed project. So for this project, the applicant has provided or requested those incentives to be the side and rear yard setback of that basement level. That was something that was also taken forth to the Planning Commission and approved with the tentative track map at the May 8th, 2023 meeting. This is a rendering, or a couple renderings of the proposed project, one from the street view along Stevens Avenue, and the one to the right is actually a division between the two residential buildings themselves. This is also going to be sort of a usable space for the residents while also providing that landscaping. The proposed project was found to be consistent with the general plan using Housing Goal 2.1 and 2.2. And also was reviewed against the California Environmental Quality Act and found to be exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act per guidelines section 15332, class 32 for infill development. Noticing for tonight's meeting was required for the proposed project, and similar to the last project, required mailing notices to be sent out to property owners within a 500-foot radius, as well as having a notice posted at the job site and having the notice posted in the issue of the San Gabriel Sun newspaper. Agendas for tonight's meeting were posted at the San Gabriel City Hall, Post Office, Public Library, and on our city's website. And it is with that that staff recommends that the Design Review Commission adopt a resolution of the Design Review Commission of the City of San Gabriel, California. I apologize for that. Approving planning case number PPD 17-005 for a precise plan of design at the address 1526 Stevens Avenue to allow for a 5-unit condominium development subject to the recommended conditions of approval. This concludes staff's presentation. Staff's available for any questions. The applicant, Eric Singh, is unfortunately not here tonight, but he does have representatives that are available to answer any questions that the commission might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. At this time, I'd like to see if any commissioners have questions for staff. Vice Chair Salo?
Yes, I have one question. I think these were recently updated. I'd like to know what the income thresholds are for moderate income.
I don't know that off the top of my head, Vice Chair Salo, but I think we could look into that for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Commissioner Lopez?
Yeah, I have a question. An extension to that, who monitors, assuming we have the thresholds, who monitors that sort of activity as to whom qualifies, whom doesn't qualify, or and who eventually gets the property, and if there's external or further bidding as so that it goes beyond the threshold and
Right.
the lower income applicants are priced out.
Right. So as a part of what was approved at the Planning Commission meeting, an affordable housing agreement was approved. And that housing agreement was provided by the applicant. They had an attorney that prepared it, and it was reviewed by our attorney, our city attorney. And basically, it's an agreement that would get recorded, and it would be tied to that property. So any kind of sales, it would have to be in compliance with that affordable housing agreement. That's something that the city would look into, but it's something that's tied to the property. So whenever one of the units is sold, one of the 5 units, that's something that's going to come up with the property documentation or the property documentation for it.
So, without the specifics, my assumption would be that either the realtor or realty company that puts these out for sale or the developer themselves would monitor and exclusively qualify lower income individuals as applying to this one unit.
So it would be something that the city does look at, and the city monitors to see that it's something that is carried forth. I wouldn't necessarily say the developer, because they did apply for this to be a condominium development, so they could sell all 5 units to 5 different individuals, and at that point, it becomes their property. But this does get recorded with the LA County Assessor, so any change to that, to the property's information, or who owns it, or who's trying to buy it, they would have to go through the LA County Assessor, and that's when that documentation would come up. And yeah, I hope I'm not forgetting anything. Sam, does that sound correct?
That's correct, Anthony.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have the information on the income threshold?
Yes, Madam Chair, that would be 60% to the area median income. And the price, there's a scale to it depending on whether it's a single individual occupant or a family of 4. So there is a range that's provided by HUD annually.
Thank you. Does that help your question?
Yeah, it does. I just wanted to make sure that we're not just sanctioning these things, and then suddenly, for lower income individuals, the asking price, for example, let's say it's $100,000, and suddenly they become outbidded by, and it sells for $250,000. Therefore, just guess, defeating the purpose of the designation of low-income housing.
Any other questions?
That is all, thank you.
So I have one more question. Does the moderate income designation stay with the property in perpetuity, or is it just the first transaction from the developer to the first owner?
It would run with the property for, I believe, 55 years
That's 55
for
years.
a purchased unit, I believe 45 for rentals, but it does have a specified, according to state law, specified period of time that it must remain affordable.
Perfect, thank you.
Commissioner Chang?
Yeah, just a quick question for staff. Is there a color board submitted with this particular project? And I appreciate the rendering, but because they got so many different color and so many different textures,
Right.
I don't want to have submitted that.
A physical color board was not provided. I believe it's on, and give me 1 second. Let's see what page number it's on. So if I could refer the commission to sheet A-6.0. The color and material board. It's not a physical material board, but the applicant did provide this color.
I appreciate that. If that's the best we got, well, we may just want to clarify a little bit with the applicant when they come up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anthony, I also have a quick question for you. I noticed the property as it stands right now does not have a parkway or a street tree, and it looks like the current or previous owner just put concrete over the parkway area. Is there a requirement for, yeah, you have to go on the aerial or
Yeah,
Google search, but there's not a parkway nor a street tree.
Mhm.
Is there a requirement for either one of those two things?
Let me pull it out on the conditions of approval. So for condition of approval number 59, as part of Exhibit 1, there was a requirement to have a street tree planted on the parkway. There is mention of replacing or repairing damaged sidewalk, but there isn't anything about replacing the any landscaping there that might have been removed. If the commission would like, I could definitely add that. That's something that the Public Works and Planning could work with the applicant on.
Because right now it is like a concrete infill
Right.
on that, in that area.
Okay. Yes, so I could definitely add that note, and if the commission does approve the project tonight, that's something that we could add as an added condition of approval, that planning will work with Public Works on that. The applicant.
Thank you. And who is the representative for the applicant?
I'll let him come up and introduce himself.
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Kaizen Chen. I am one of the client's agents, and I'm here today to deliver this presentation on condominium development project located at 1526 Stevens Avenue in San Gabriel, California. This project aims to bring a unique and modern living space to our community while respecting the existing architectural styles in the neighborhood. The development is designed in a configurations of two separate structures, a front structure consisting of 2 units and a rear structure containing of 3 units. Both structures are 2 stories in height with an existing additional basement level. The units in this development offer a range of sizes to accommodate different preferences. Unit sizes vary from 1,383 square feet to 1,524 square feet, totaling 7,197 square feet of livable space. This helps diversify in unit sizes, ensures that potential residents will have options to suit their needs and lifestyles, and for those who can afford as part of the low income. This development has a semi-subterranean parking design. The basement level is positioned 4 feet below street level, allowing for convenient parking while minimizing the visual impact on the streetscape. This design not only provides practicality, but also enhances the overall aesthetics of the project. I do have the civil engineer as well, if you have any questions regarding the subterraneans, in addition to the streetscape. We have given a careful considerations of the importance of public open spaces within the development. 2 areas have been designated as public open spaces. The first is located between the 2 structures and takes the form of a stepping terrace, creating an inviting and visually appealing environment. The second public open space is situated at the rear of the lot on the podium deck. These open spaces offer opportunities for residents and visitors and family members to enjoy the outdoors and foster a sense of community for those who can afford living in that lifestyle. And those who can't will qualify for those low income. Additionally, each unit in the development has its own private open space. The roof deck of each unit serves as a private outdoor area that is directly accessible from the respective units. These roof decks provide an intimate space for residents to relax, entertain guests, or enjoy views of the surrounding areas when they're elevated so high on the rooftop. Parking provisions have been carefully considered and adhere to zoning requirements. Each unit is provided with 2 enclosed parking spaces with decorative garage doors, and ensuring that residents have ample parking for their vehicles. In addition, 2 guest parking spaces are available to accommodate visitors to the development. The architectural development of the design embraces a gabled modern style. We have chosen hardy shingle wall siding, as the primary material, giving the development a contemporary and distinctive appearance. Glass rails will be incorporated to match the proposed style, adding elegance and modernity to the project. The chosen architectural style is consistent with the eclectic architectural styles found within the neighborhood, ensuring that the project seamlessly blends into its surroundings. To enhance the visual appeal of the development, new landscaping will be implemented throughout the entire site, and if need be, on the streetscape as well. We can discuss that with the owner. This landscaping plan includes additions of 1 36-inch box tree and 13 24-inch box trees. These trees will not only contribute to the aesthetics, but also provide shade and improve the overall environmental quality of the development, along with any screenings as well for privacies. In summary, our proposed condominium development at 1526 Stevens Avenue aims to provide an attractive and contemporary living space that respects the existing architectural style in the neighborhood, with a thoughtful design, ample parking provisions, public and private spaces, and a gabled modern architecture style. This development will contribute positively to the community. We have carefully considered the aesthetics, functionality, and environmental aspects to create a project that meets the needs and desires of the future residents while honoring the character of the neighborhood. Thank you for your time and consideration. I am available to answer any questions on behalf of the owner. If not, I can relay that back to him and get back to you in that answer regarding to this exciting development project. Thank you.
Thank you. You can wait to see if we have questions.
Yes.
Vice Chair Sala?
Yeah, I do have a question. Can you help clarify for us visually the two setback encroachments that you're requesting in exchange for the moderate income unit? I think that would probably be on the basement site plan on A-1.1.
Yes. Would I be able to bring the civil engineer?
Sure. And probably bring it up on screen for us to visualize.
So Vice Chair Salo, unfortunately, we don't have, as a part of the PowerPoint presentation, the basement plan, but we do have the site plan, so I think that's something that the engineer and the applicant representative can use.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Good evening. My name is Jason. I'm from Callan Engineering Callan Engineering, and I can answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, just point out the required setback and the encroachment over the setback.
Would you be able to clarify which setback is in question?
I believe in the presentation, 2 encroachments were being proposed in exchange for a moderate income unit, so I'd like to see where those 2 encroachments occur.
On the technical engineering standpoint, the only reason why we would have any sort of encroachment or setback regarding the basement level for any subterranean levels is to accommodate any subdrains or drainage features or appurtenances as necessary. Any other setback requirements pertaining to the building itself, that's something that we don't have any stance upon.
I can add on to it. It's due to the back up of the turning radius for the garage, so we had to fit within the garage 20 feet setback to enclose the vehicle, and then that turning radius. So it encroaches further into the property. The property is quite narrow at only 50 feet. So we can only work with what we have.
Okay. So at the basement level, how close do you come to the property line?
I believe the city architect, you have the,
A foot and a half, okay.
Oh, yeah. Yes. It's due to all the back space, so it pinches.
Right, so that's what they want to say.
Right.
Thank you, Ron.
So there will be proper shoring, and the geologist would be out there to ensure that there be some sort of a slot cut or some controlled setting of how the earth is being taken out at each segment, so it doesn't compromise the neighbor's side yard. It's been done for many projects as well.
Okay, so I understand on the side yard setback, and then I guess there's another setback encroachment?
It's towards the rear yard by the 2 guest parking as well.
Is it this?
The rear yard setback's at 2'6" by
Two-
the, yes.
2 feet
2'6",
6".
yes. Yeah, these 2 right here, this one and this one. It's 2'6" from the rear yard and 18 inches from the side yard. And this is due to the turning radius of the vehicles, due to the 50-foot width of the property.
Thank you, I got it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Commissioner Lopez?
Thank you. I kind of just blurted out my question. I apologize.
No problem, no problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Chang?
For the architect, just want to make sure that you have pay attention to the exterior lighting. Has that been considered? Do you have it anywhere? How would the project look like at night? And, besides the required lighting, are there any other proposed lighting on your project?
So to achieve these contemporary modern looks, a lot of these lightings are concealed. So if you see that at the entrance, there's these eave at the entrance, it will be downlights. And those are a little bit more glow than the safety lights. And these could be ambient lights that can be on sensors and can be shielded off so it doesn't reflect to the neighbors.
I see. So most everything will be downlight or conceal light.
Yes, and it would be on a sensor base.
Okay. It will be shown when you do your working drawing.
Yes, it would be on the reflective ceiling plan.
I just want to make sure you consider all of that because the quality project will probably require a lot of those and also the landscape lighting so that the project will come out right at the end.
Yes. Thank you.
Also, one more quick question. On your stucco finish, you have about 2, 3 type of different finishes, right? And in the front, you have this score stucco finish. Are you help me to understand that you have action panels, and are you having dividing score lines on between the stucco, or just change the stucco color? How is that coming out?
Yes. So we call it the fry riglet. It's a piece of metal that is about 3 inches by about 1/4 of an inch deep. And that actually helps the stucco in this monolithic surface from cracking. And that allows different surface to be applied onto it. If it's smooth or semi-textured, you can have that break.
And when you said smooth, you mean this sand finish, or you talking about glass smooth finish on the stucco?
It'd be sand finish. Yes.
Sand finish,
Yes,
right.
it's a stucco.
Those smooth finishes are very hard to achieve.
Right.
They start cracking it afterwards. So, okay, all right, that's fine. I understand now, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our city architect?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question that I had on my review sheet that I think is still not answered. It's on page A41, section number 1. It shows the basement wall extending 7'2" of the neighboring property, and then immediately adjacent is a planter. And the reason I bring this up is I have had this problem 2 times myself, that the building department had been concerned that a kid or a maintenance guy working on that planter can fall off and fall into the neighbor's yard. And so we either had to put an additional handrail on top of that wall, or we had to separate the planter from that perimeter wall so that nobody could just fall off of it. So I put that in my comments, and it still hasn't been addressed.
That's an excellent comment. Thank you.
That is an excellent comment, and it could be a conditional approval, either through a trellis screen or some landscaping feature to allow that additional barricade above that height to meet that minimum 42-inch rail. So it's up to the committee of your suggestions, and we can bring that to the owner's attention. Thank you.
Ron, are you looking at a specific style? Recommending?
Not a specific style, it's just they need to take into account the safety of some kid or a maintenance guy falling off of it. That's all. So it could be a rail or lattice, or the whole planter could be divorced from the perimeter wall, so there's a gap. So somebody will fall into the gap instead of falling into the neighbor's yard.
So since the applicant is asking for recommendations, I'd like to see if we can provide him a specific recommendation or just have him work with staff.
The concern could be see that the wall exists already 7'2". So if you added another 3 feet or so, it's a 10-foot element. And so I don't know how the commission would feel about that either. Yeah.
Okay.
I can bring that to the owner's attention. We're just trying to be more architecturally comprehensive. So we don't want to introduce something that is not part of the elements that's on the architectural feature, which we have glass railings or CMU walls or concrete walls. And since it's on the planter, I was wondering that lattice could be part of the climbing vine or something that could be still see-through, but allows the plant to grow. So in a way, it prevents anyone to physically see it as some sort of element to climb over. We can work that out with the landscape architect on this, if you don't mind.
Our city architect, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I think we'd be okay with that. I think, you know,
Yes, sir. It's just a little bit taller than it should be, yeah. 42 inches. Yes. Yeah. Right, right. Okay. If need be, we can discuss it with the structural engineer too, for any kind of fall protection on the force of the rail. If it's inquiring any head rails or any that sort. Yes, that's where it causes quite a monolithic scale from the neighbors. So we try to be respectful for that. So that trellis allows that sort of a see-through transparency, but it's still physically something's there. Understand. Thank you.
I think all of my questions have been answered. Oh, we have one more.
I just want to clarify something. You mentioned about the lighting and mitigating the light exposure to the neighbors.
Yes, sir.
And you said that can. My question is it just an elective kind of thing that you're going to do, or will you do it?
It's part of downlights are mostly down, and it's lights to the entry size. If there's any scones on the walls, there will be a shield as part of the feature.
Okay, so it's a will. They will be.
Will be, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Also, with these downlights and so on, they'll be on the master switch. It's not that the tenants can turn off these lights. They would be on.
Yes,
master
so on the landscape and at the entry, there will be a house meter that will be controlled through a separate timer at nighttime, so then prevents any trip hazards or any securities for that sake during the time, because once you get to the back, it's quite dark, so you would like to have some sort of HOA to control that.
Thank you. Anything else from the commissioners?
No, thank you.
All right. It is now time for public comment.
Thank you, committee.
Thank you. Is there anyone wanting to speak on this item?
We did not receive one for this item.
Who is that? Okay, here. No one? Okay, all right, thank you. Sorry. Okay, so it is now 7:28 p.m. The time for public comment on this item is now closed. Staff, do
No additional comments, Madam Chair. Just only if the commission decides to approve this project tonight, if we could just go through those recommended added conditions of approval. Thank you.
All right. With that, it's time for discussion. I'll start with Vice Chair Sala,
I have no further comments to add.
Commissioner Lopez,
No further comment.
Commissioner Chen. And with that, then is there a motion to approve the item and the two, well, we have a few few things here. We want a planted parkway in addition to the tree that's already in the conditions of approval. The exterior lighting, we want to make sure that there are the shields on that, and making sure that the exterior lighting is on the master switch, that there is a safety element on the side, either a trellis or railing that is to code to protect anyone from falling into the neighbor's yard. Am I missing anything? All right. So is there a motion with those conditions?
Yeah, this is Vice Chair Sala. I motion to approve planning case number PPD 17-1005.
Second?
I second.
Great. Roll call, please.
Chair Romo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Salo,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang, and Commissioner Lopez.
Yes.
Vote is 4-0, motion passed.
Thank you. So, we are here at the sister project at 1515 Stevens Avenue, planning case number PPD 19-010, precise plan of design, applicant Eric Sang. And Christine, you're gonna, are doing the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. The item before you tonight is a request for the approval of a precise plan of design application to allow the development of a 5-unit condominium project at 1515 Stevens Avenue. So the project site is located along the west side of Stevens Avenue, between South New Avenue and Prospect Avenue. The site is bordered by multifamily residences in all directions with the same zoning designations. And the property is currently developed with one single-family residence, a duplex, and a detached garage at the rear, which are all proposed to be demolished for the construction of the project. The subject property is zoned RNC for residential neighborhood conservation within the Valley Boulevard specific plan, with an underlying zoning designation of R3, and has a general plan land use designation of high-density residential. This is an image of the proposed site plan. The density for the project site allows up to 5 units, and the project proposes a total of 5 units, separated into 2 structures. The unit sizes will range between 1383 to 1524 square feet, and all units will have a semi-subterranean 2-car garage with overhead storage. The 2 required guest parking spaces will be located at the basement level in the semi-subterranean garage area. The project complies with all of the R3 development standards in terms of density, lot coverage, building height, parking, and open space. However, similar to the last item that you heard, the project does request 2 concessions for reduced side and rear setbacks for the semi-subterranean garage, as permitted by the state density bonus law, in exchange for providing 20% affordable housing units in the project. The concessions for the reduced setbacks were approved by the Planning Commission in the form of an affordable housing agreement at the May 8th meeting. The proposed project is designed in a contemporary architectural style. Design elements include wood siding and painted corrugated metal, siding for accents, smooth finish stucco, second floor balconies with glass railings, large windows to allow natural light into the interior space, full view glass garage doors, and roof decks for each unit for private open space. The project will provide landscaping along the north side yard and the rear yard in combination with 6-foot-tall block walls to offer screening and additional privacy to the neighboring properties. Landscaping will also be provided along the front yard to help enhance the street scene of the development, and this will consist of various shrubs and a 36-inch box fruitless olive tree. A total of 14 new trees are proposed to be planted throughout the property. On May 8th, 2023, the Planning Commission approved the proposed tentative track map number 83926 for the proposed development with a 4-0 vote. The project meets housing goals 2.1 and 2.2 of the general plan. And the general plan land use designation for the site is high-density residential, which allows for the multifamily residential development in the zone. The project was reviewed for compliance with CEQA, and it was found exempt from CEQA per guidelines section 15332, class 32, as an infill development. The public notice was mailed out to all property owners within a 300-foot radius. The notice was posted at the project site, and the agendas were posted at City Hall, the post office, and the public library, and it was also advertised in the San Gabriel Sun on June 15th. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt the resolution approving planning case number PPD 22-006 for a precise plan of design at 1515 Stevens Avenue for a 5-unit condominium development, subject to the recommended conditions of approval. And that concludes staff's presentation, and I'm available for questions.
Great, thank you very much, Christine. With that, we'll start with Commissioner Chen. Do you have any questions, clarifying questions for staff?
I'm a little unclear too, because I was looking again at that same deal. That there appears there is a furniture here on that deck in the same location, so I think there would be the same condition here. Yeah, there's no section to show it clearly.
Commissioner Lopez?
No question.
Vice Chair Sela?
I have no questions for staff. Thank you.
I don't either. Thank you very much, Christine.
Thank you.
Good evening, Your Honor. If I may want to do a little overview, or if you're okay, I can present a little bit first, and then we can talk for any questions. So let's dive into the details of this project. The development is designed in a configuration of 2 separate structures, the front structure consisting of 2 units and the rear structure containing 3 units. Both structures are 2 stories in height with basement level. So it's very similar conditions as the first, so it's a sister unit. So overall, we just want to see architecturally if there's any advice or feedback from you. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Chen?
Yes. So understand. Definitely understand your concern, and it's a big safety for us as well. So the approach that we do is we have the mechanical, plumbing, electrical engineers, and the electrical engineer actually has a photometric test. That what they do is they recommend certain type of lightings for the house lights, for along the landscape, the walkway, the downlights of the awnings, and then they will do a study to indicate how much lumens are being spread out to that area. And if it's not enough, the electrical engineer can add additional lights elsewhere to compensate for all of that photometric. So that's a study that we can provide to the city to make sure that everything is covered and that it doesn't flood over to the neighbors as well. So that could be a condition you can ask as part of the. Okay. Yes, they are the same. They're also on sheet A 7.0, if you would like to take a look at them. But we're trying to, in a way, celebrate that natural beauty of the wood planks as that accent color, as opposed to the black and white of the stucco and the trims. Yes. Yes. That could be something we can discuss with the owner.
Okay, great, thank you. Commissioner Lopez? Any questions for the applicant?
No questions, thank you.
Vice Chair Salo?
No questions, but I did want to say that, although I do prefer this color palette, I like that the two projects look different, even though it's the same floor plan, so it's good to add that variety.
No questions, but I think it's an interesting concept. Instead of having sister projects side by side, they're basically almost across the street from one another. And as you drive down the street, you're going to have the bookend, so to speak, of very similar projects on that street. So I think it's very good. It's good that the applicant is moving forward and trying to enhance his development, because you'll have 10 units to sell, right? And it's easier than just doing one at one time and one at another time. Those are my only comments. Yes, Ron?
So it's not as well documented on this one as it was in the previous one, but I think there's the same planter condition. It shows in plan, but there's not a section through it. There's a little bit of guesswork, but if it's the same, then the same condition would apply.
Yes, sir.
So I think for the condition, before I do that, see if we have any public comment. So, yes, we do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ralph Ramirez?
Thank you.
Yes, I have, just want to mention, my name is Ralph Ramirez, and I live on the property north of 1515, and I've lived there for over 30 years, and I've been concerned about this moment ever since I bought the property, that somebody would build a tall building. I just want to make sure that it gets done as best possible to not totally destroy our little world that we have there. There's trees between the two properties. I mentioned this last time, that I'm pretty sure that with its small setback that they're given, that exemption because of the one low-income property that they're selling, they're building very close to our property. I believe it's 1 foot 6 inches to the north property, and so I'm very, very concerned what's going to happen to all our landscaping. And I just want to make sure that everybody here knows that that has to be addressed. Otherwise, we're going to have a beautiful property, brand new property next door, and we're going to have our property all filled with dead trees and dead plants because of the digging next door. Also, this is my brother, and we're co-owners of the properties. And he's concerned about when they start digging for the basement, what's going to happen to his property is if any of the land starts giving way. So we want to make sure that they shore up the land properly. I know you're all looking into that. I know there's inspectors and everything, but I just wanted to mention it. And like say the landscaping, I'm very concerned what's going to happen there. Also, we're going to have this tall building. Every year seems like the apartments get taller and taller. We have an apartment on Newbie that's looks like it's 3 stories, and this one I imagine is going to be the same because I heard what they were saying about a terrace. They're going to have a terrace on the top, right? Which is going to be a nice private area for the residents to go up there and enjoy the evening. And basically, they're going to be enjoying the evening while looking over our yards. So we're going to be out there. We're going to feel like we're at the zoo, you know. And I know that we can't stop the project. I know that, but with the presentation here, I couldn't get an idea of how many windows, how big are the windows of all these 5 units looking over our property. And so, like I say, whatever the commission can do to address our problems, it would be appreciated. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Christine, do you want to address some of the comments from Mr. Ramirez?
Yes, thank you, Chair. With respect to the concern about the trees for the north neighbor, there is a condition of approval under Exhibit 1. That would be condition number 9, regarding a certified arborist report being submitted to the Planning Division during building plan check, evaluating construction impacts to any existing mature Class 1 trees which are protected in the city, that they would need to be either preserved or protected, and if any are damaged during construction, that the owner of this project would need to provide replacement trees.
And would the replacement trees be such to try to replace that canopy that was lost?
There's a required ratio in the code, but it would have to be something comparable as far as species and size goes.
And then, as far as the windows, he was also concerned about window placement and views into his yard.
With respect to sizes, I believe there's a window schedule provided on the plans. I can refer to that sheet, that page number. So that'll be on sheet A 2.0.
And you have, yes. Yes, Chairman.
Sure. We can note that for the record. Did you want to place a condition of approval on the project for that?
I think that would be a good condition to add, because we probably won't be able to address it tonight here. And I think if the neighbor and the architect work together, they can come up to a resolution and maybe have staff be kind of the moderator, mediator.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the commission, if it's acceptable to the commission, staff can expand on that condition as part of the arborist report and working with the city landscape architect to evaluate those areas where there may be windows or privacy concerns.
On the north planter, it looks like a row of star jasmine, which is a low-growing ground cover. Maybe that could become like heavenly bamboo or something that's more vertical to be more of a wall of plants.
Or they can also grow it up. Star jasmine can be grown as a vine.
Vine would have to cling to that little wall.
Yeah,
It's not going to get that tall. So I'm just suggesting something that goes
taller than the wall. Okay. Great, thank you. Any other?
In response to the window sizes, there's window sizes of varying dimensions. Some are 2'6" by 5 feet in dimension, and there are smaller windows, I believe, for the bathrooms that are about 2 by 3 feet.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I have a question, question, comment. Mr. Ramirez expressed a concern about his, once the basement was being carved out, that he was concerned about his property falling in or the plants or things of that sort. May I suggest also that the developer also get together with him and kind of explain the process, what it's going to be, and what the conditions are as far as replacing whatever plants are killed, if any, so that he can feel assured that his property is not going to start sliding in what he's concerned about. But also, may I suggest to Mr. Ramirez also next time around that if we can see some visuals as to more or less the property or what you're talking about as far as the plants that you have on that side and things of that sort, so that we can have a better visual idea.
See it on the aerial? You can see pretty much all the plants on the aerial picture.
Yes, Madam Chair, and members of the Design Review Commission, as part of the Planning Commission's review, Mr. Ramirez also attended that meeting and provided comments relating to the existing landscaping on his property as well as the grading. As part of the proposed project, conditions of approval were added to address the comments, including to bring to Public Works' attention the concern with the grading and the shoring, and staff has communicated that to the Public Works staff. So in addition to adding it as a condition of approval, bringing it to the attention of the Public Works staff to give that attention. I believe the project architect also took down the information of Mr. Ramirez to make sure to have those discussions with him as part of their construction drawings. But staff will also be happy to carry on those conditions of approval as part of the Design Review Commission's conditions as well.
And just for clarification, a heritage tree is a tree with a trunk of a certain dimension, is that correct?
That's correct, as identified in the city's tree preservation ordinance.
And it's usually 18 inches?
24 to 36 in diameter,
Okay,
approximately.
so, think that's something that, as you look at the trees on your property, you look at the width of the trunk, and you yourself can identify if it's a heritage tree or not, if it's a wider trunk in diameter.
Yes, and again, staff can evaluate this with the city landscape architect.
And you have his contact information, you'll be able to follow up with him, with the neighbor, with the heritage tree definition?
Yes, staff can communicate that.
Yes, thank you, thank you. All right. And I think we have one more public comment. So we'll need you to fill out a card.
Okay, yes, we got most of the items, but just a couple more to add.
You can state your name and then fill out the card later.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Let's go to the mic.
Yes, good evening. This is my brother Ralph. We've owned 1509 Stevens, which is immediately next to the building project. And I particularly live at 1509 Apartment B, which is at the rear of the 170 high. The property is 203 feet long, and I'm at the back, the Apartment B. Okay, we've had a little friction over the years. I've lived there for 45 years, a long time. I could tell you stories that'll entertain you the rest of the night. Anyway, on that particular property, 1509B, there's always been rain. When it rains and it pours like the Dickens, we've always had a drainage problem, which would only get worse if you put a block wall immediately on that site, on the property line. What happens is when it rains, and it rains hard, the water goes towards Valley Boulevard, which is normal. When we're living there now, we have a chain link fence. The chain link fence does not block the rain. Now comes a block wall. If the new owners put up a block wall from one to the other, from Stevens end to end, and seals it, well, now you got an issue. Now you got rainwater that it will have no place to go. Like I said, now when it rains, it flows right through the chain link fence towards the new owners. Coming the new block wall, you're going to have a swimming hole. Now that was one of the issues. As far as the trees line the whole entire property. They only have like 18 inches where we planted them as babies and they grew. We've always had a little bit of friction between the owner and ourselves, my brother and myself. The friction has always been there as far as the responsibility of the trees. We've explained we take care of our side, but we cannot go over to your side. Liability will not allow us to do that. We can't go into property that doesn't belong to us to do anything. You got to maintain it. The owner that lives, I don't know if it's the same owner, but the one we knew, she explained to us, she says, well, I don't really care what the law says. I'd like you to maintain the property so we don't have all this goodies on our side, meaning the large trees. And I said, well, we can maintain our side, but we're not going to go into your property to maintain anything. We fall, and then you're going to be on liability big time. So her response was, I don't, I want to know what you're going to do, not what's legal or not legal. And we stopped there. We do not trim anything on the other side. So the trees are still there. They haven't gone anywhere. They're still big, humongous trees. Their side has never been. As a matter of fact, the gardeners that are there now, we asked to have part of their, because they do have trees on their side, not as many as we do. We asked to have it, hey, your trees are growing into our side. Can you do something about it? He said, well, we can charge you. I said, yeah, but these are your trees. Well, it is what it is. You want us to cut the trees, go over your side and trim it, it's gonna be a certain amount of dollars. Well, there you go. It's a no-win deal. But the biggest concern there right now, besides the trees, is that the rain. We know that we are headed into El Nino year. That's what they're talking about. If the El Nino becomes a reality, well, now you got thousands of gallons of wanting to go towards the valley. Now you got a block wall. It's not going to go anywhere. It's going to stay there. And when it hits the wall, now what? Where is the water going to go?
Thank you. Can staff address the drainage issue?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. This was also another item that was raised before the Planning Commission. And similar to shoring comment, the comment regarding shoring as well as landscaping, it was added as a condition of approval and also brought to the attention of the Public Works staff, excuse me. So it is something that the city is paying attention to, and we'll see this detail again in the arborist report as well as in the grading, excavation, shoring, retaining wall details provided to Public Works.
And do we need to add that as a condition? We don't because it's already there, correct?
With the Planning Commission, but as previously stated, staff can also include it as part of the commission's
Right.
recommended
And the
condition.
responsibility of the trees that are going to go, if they do survive, they're still going to grow. They're still going to go into the other side. What's your response to that?
They'll,
Well,
any property owner should be doing that, and this is at least when they want to sell them. They want to sell those units, so those units need to be maintained. And
Right.
after there's going to be a homeowners association group,
Yeah.
and they're not going to want to see the mess, so they're going to need to talk and come to a resolution regarding the maintenance of those trees.
yeah, it's only common sense. I mean, we have to worry about the ones on the other side. At the other side of the property, we have to take care of those. And we're out there every 2 or 3 months trimming the trees that they're not ours, but they're the property owners. And they, it's a no-win deal. But like I told her, if it's in your property, you're welcome to have all the fruit that the trees have, but you got to maintain them. Well, can you do it? I said, no, we can't. I can do it, but if I trip and hurt myself on your side, well, it's more than an issue. Now you become rich, or if you survive to talk about it. Yeah. So it's it's little details, but not as, right now. The main one is the drainage. Are we doing a 6-inch pipe all the way to the end of the street? That's one of the issues.
If you can have a seat, I think the city architect, we did have a 3-minute timeline.
No, yes, I
went
think
over that, and we wanted to let you have your say.
Right,
but
right.
Let us address and talk amongst ourselves.
Thank you for your
Okay?
time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. Jack? Yes,
Madam Chair, one other thing, I looked up the definition of the landmark, historically significant dimensions and so on. So if any of those trees fit that category, their root system also is something to be concerned about that may, because the roots are clearly not going to stop at the property line.
Right.
So that would probably be addressed as well. Yeah, okay.
And it depends on the type of the tree, if the roots are going to go, vertical, horizontal versus vertical. So, it depends on the type of the tree. So I think having the city arborist and dealing with everything, that would be the most qualified person to address this matter. Okay. No more public comments, right, Jackie? Okay. Then it is now 8:03. The time for public comment on this item is now closed. And does city staff have any additional comments?
No, Madam Chair, no comments.
Okay, great. So with that, I'd like to see if there's any discussion. Okay. So the items that we have here that were mentioned are number 1, the trellis or handrail between the the neighboring properties to address any potential falls, to limit those. We talked about exterior lighting, having a lighting study, and then those lighting shields to protect the neighbors. We also have a condition, potential condition here on the architect working with the neighbor and the city's landscape architect to address the planting of the trees, the roots included with that, identify any heritage trees, and also privacy issues, so the new developer can strategically add trees to provide privacy. I think this is extremely important, looking at the trees, because we don't know if they're heritage trees, we don't know about the root system. So that tree issue between the two properties can be an issue, and that needs to be resolved with the landscape architect, because here on the dais, we're not appropriately, adequately, what we have in front of us, we cannot address that. And then the drainage issue that was brought up at the Planning Commission, we want to reiterate that the drainage is important between the two properties, and to make sure that this development isn't creating a flood zone for the neighbor or anything close to that. Okay. Did I miss any other conditions? All right. With that, is there a motion to approve this project? Smartphone. Is there a second?
I second that.
Thank you. Roll call?
Chair Romo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Salo,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang, and Commissioner Lopez.
Yes.
The vote is 4-0, motion passed.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you for Dr. Ramirez Brothers for coming here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
All right. We now move to our next item, item D. And this address 330 West Las Tunas Drive, planning case number PPD 21-008, precise plan of design, applicant Robert Montaño. Our presentation will be made by Christine Sung.
Thank you, Chair. So this item is a request for an approval for precise plan of design to propose a new 5-story medical office building at 330 West Las Tunas Drive. The project site is located on the south side of West Las Tunas Drive between South San Marino Avenue to the east and North Santa Anita Street to the west. The subject property will be combined with the adjoining parcel to the south, and the two lots combined will result in a total area of about 1.46 acres. A lot line adjustment application will be required to combine the two parcels, and that will be reviewed administratively by Planning and Public Works, and this requirement is noted as condition number 12 in the conditions of approval in the staff report. The subject property is currently improved with an existing 1-story, 5,032 square foot medical office building that was built in 1997. The parcel to the south is currently used as a parking lot, which serves the existing medical office. The existing structure will be demolished to construct the proposed project. The property is zoned MF for medical facilities and has a general land use designation of medical facilities as well. The proposed project will demolish the existing one-story medical office building and construct a five-story, 74,490 square foot medical office building in its place. Vehicular access to the site will be provided along West Las Tunas Drive, and pedestrian entrances to the building will be located along the north and south elevations of the building. A 51-space surface parking lot is proposed behind the building, and additionally, a two-level subterranean parking garage will provide 248 parking spaces, which includes 114 tandem parking spaces. A total of 299 parking spaces will be provided for the project for tenants, staff, and visitors. The proposed project complies with the medical facilities requirements for floor area ratio, building height, setbacks, open space, and parking, as shown in the table on the screen. The side and rear yard setbacks provided are greater than the minimum required and are provided as well as additional open space and landscaping. This is the front elevation of the proposed building facing West Las Tunas Drive. The project is designed in a contemporary architectural style. It includes architectural elements such as spandrel glass glazing on the curtain wall as a major accent along the front facade, a variety of exterior materials such as stucco with a Venetian plaster finish, metal and aluminum accents, and sunshades over the windows for both functionality and slight articulation. These renderings are from a northeast perspective on the left and a southeast perspective on the right. The project will also be providing new landscaping on the property in the form of new trees, shrubs, and flowering plants, as well as ground cover. All the existing trees on site are proposed to be removed and replaced with a total of 36 new trees. The proposed trees will be mostly planted along the perimeter of the rear portion of the property, so it can serve as a buffer between the project site and the neighboring residential properties. The general plan land use designation, as mentioned, is medical facilities, and this designation allows for the orderly growth of hospitals and related medical uses for this area. Additionally, the proposed development meets the following goals of the general plan. Technical studies relating to traffic, air quality, greenhouse gases, and noise were prepared by Michael Baker International and submitted to the city for review. This project was reviewed for compliance with CEQA and was found to be exempt per the requirements of CEQA under guideline section 15332 as a class 32 infill development project. The public notice was mailed out to all property owners and tenants within a 300-foot radius. I'm sorry, there's a typo on the slide. The notice was posted at the project site, and agendas were posted at City Hall, the post office, and the public library, and also advertised in San Gabriel Sun on June 15th. Staff recommends that the Design Review Commission adopt a resolution approving planning case number PPD 21-008 for a precise plan of design to allow the development of a new 5-story medical office building at 330 West Las Tunas, subject to the recommended conditions of approval. That concludes staff's presentation. The applicant's representative is here today, and they also have a presentation for the commission, but I am available for questions.
Vice Chair Salo, do you have any questions for staff?
No questions for staff.
Commissioner Lopez?
No questions.
Commissioner Chen? I do have one question. Will this project have any public art?
No public art is proposed. I'll invite the applicant up.
Good evening, Commissioners. Robert Montano with Adept Development. We're representatives for Dr. Chang, the owner of the property. Dr. Chang has been in practice for many years. He's got a long commitment to this community, and this has been a lifelong ambition of his to serve his clients and to deliver a Class A medical office facility to really honor his parents at this point. He is nearing retirement from his practice, and what he wants to really do is now establish a place where
He can turn his practice over to others and continue to really provide services to the community as he's done for decades here in San Gabriel. The building that we've got is a contemporary design. It was very important for Dr. Chang for the project to be built compliant with code. So this building is 100% code compliant to the medical facility zone in terms of setbacks, heights, FAR. And we really tried to look at how to develop a building and propose a building that would be sensitive to the other land uses in the area, but also connect to the hospital. As you know, there's a small portion of his property that is a tail that heads west and connects to the property. A number of doctors can essentially on foot, or even patients on foot, park at one location and then receive services at another, minimizing traffic circulation through the area, and really helping nurture and sustain the land uses and the goals that we wanted to see as part of this medical facility and this medical district. I don't want to go into too much of the architecture. I just want to give you a little bit of a backstory on how we've gotten here with this project. We've had a wonderful experience working with staff. I would like to turn the project over to Kip Dixon, our lead architect, our design director, who can walk you through kind of the genesis of our project and how we've come in terms of the design and the massing and the layout and how we've gotten to the presentation that you have here today. We also have a small video that I think is queued up that'll actually be a 3D rendering kind of flying you through the project so you can see it in context.
Good evening, I'm Kip Dixon. I'm the Director of Design for Adept Architecture and work very closely with Robert. This project is interesting in the sense that it may have been in front of some of you a number of years ago, and that there was a bit of a confusion amongst the city in terms of the back piece of property being zoned for residential and the front being medical, and that the intentions were to zone the entire thing for the medical uses. And that has now been rectified in terms of moving the project forward, and it's taken us some time to get back to this point. And if you're able to call up the video, I think we can start with the video, and it gives you a little bit of clarity in terms of what the overall project looks like, and then I can talk about details. This looking from the south, obviously coming over the parking lot to the rear. The south side of the building has a drop-off for patients and for ambulance, and considerable amount of solar control on the south and the west side of the building. Mechanical screening on the top. Each one of the windows really is privacy windows at the lower end, and spandrel at the top and bottom. Per the comments that we had originally in terms of bringing cafe to the front, we've recessed the glass back along the street edge in order to provide outdoor seating. And there is an upstairs deck for the tenants of the building. This takes us around and back to the final side of the building. The owner desired to have much more of a institutional quality to the building. He sees this not necessarily only as being a medical office building, but a clinic that will offer a range of services. If you want to pull up the slides, I'm happy to walk through it. Okay, thank you. As you can see from the package on your desk, we've excluded a lot of engineering details and things which were requested, so that we've cut this presentation down to something that's a little more straightforward in terms of the design. In setting up the site, one of the things that was important to us was bringing the building out to the street, considering that Las Tunas is a major thoroughfare and probably at its widest anywhere in San Gabriel along this area. And as mentioned, the doctor felt that he would like to see this building be developed as though it was a mini hospital, even though it won't have inpatient care, but with prominence along the street. Access to the site, there we go, it's coming in. Comes in and parking is controlled up behind you in terms of the driveway to the north. That also serves as a fire lane that has been worked out with the fire department in terms of entering the site at this particular location. Parking, we have the choice of dropping down in terms of a ramp that takes us down to the lower levels of parking. There is access that comes over here in terms of trash and loading space with a new gate that is controlled electronically, and that vehicles have the opportunity in terms of coming in, making a drop-off for patients directly at the back as well as at the front of the building into the lobby before proceeding into parking here or parking down below. This just gets in a little bit closer in terms of the area that's been recessed in terms of cafe space along the front side of this, pharmacy that looks out onto to the street, lobby space that comes back in and joins both in terms of the front and the back. One exit going out through the main exit and one of the exits coming out and then being clear back here to the back of the property. There's also access along the side of the building here that was requested by the fire department. You can see pointed out in terms of the service areas and the transformer vault that is located over here under the porte cochere to the center. The southern end of the site, in terms of the development, in terms of where the parking ramp, get the right indicator up here, parking ramp and gates controlling the parking down to the lower level, as well as a limited number of parking that is up here, and that's intended for doctors at this point in the discussion. This takes you down to the lower levels in terms of the lower end of the south end of the site in terms of the parking configuration. A rather difficult task to kind of fit this into a triangular site. But one of the things that we've done is hold the property or the building away over here on the west side in terms of where we do have some residential properties that are rather close, so that we've got deep well in terms of being able to provide landscaping in this area. We do have tandem parking that is in here, and the intention is that that will be controlled in terms of employee parking, not patient parking. But also the discussion is there in terms of having a parking attendant that will be directing folks in terms of specific locations of where they can park. Access then goes up to the main building directly from both levels of the parking. Medical office building here, again talking about the cafe and pharmacy that is at the front. Medical spaces. This is scheduled to be an imaging center that is down along the lowest level, and we're planning for a knockout panel in terms of being able to bring in large imaging equipment into this area. Second floor is going to be medical office suites, and at this point in time we're contemplating whether they will be condominiums or whether they will be for lease. As we work our way up through the building, the third and fourth floor, very similar. And then finally, as we bring ourselves up to the roof, There's a balcony space along the rear of the property, as well as access out onto a patio. Part of this patio was with the intention in terms of breaking the scale of the building down as it stepped towards the street. Diagrams in terms of the utilities that we had to deal with. There's a number of power lines that are on the site, and we had to work through it with the power department in terms of how we would relocate each one of these elements. And then also in terms of understanding that we have heavier load in terms of truck access that is going to be coming back in terms of both trash, but also in terms of getting to the transformer that is back this rear location. This is a little diagram of the existing easements and the plans that we've worked out in terms of removing along here and then stringing the power line along existing to circumvent, wrap around the entire site. Come on. Next. It's not liking it. I'll let you click it. There you go. Open space plan in terms of development, in terms of more mature planting, both in terms of a raised planter here and deep well planter in terms of the west side and the south portion of the property. This is part of the property, and currently we'll be looking at whether or not it is gated at both ends, but most certainly it is going to be gated here so that our adjacent property owner still has access across our property. Next, please. Fire access, we worked with the fire department in terms of their desire and acceptance of being able to bring the truck in to this point, but then also having access directly along the front of the building and being able to walk to the back of the building and have their hose dimensions clear. Ladder access both from here as well as at the north side of the building. Next, please. Diagram just showing in terms of loading, positioning, and trash, in terms of the ability to open this gate and exit this way, or to simply come back and exit back to the opposite side. Next, please. Facade of the building, we looked at this in terms of being an asymmetric design, and we really looked to develop a larger element that was on the side that was closer to the hospital in the major development, an recessed area in terms of articulation, in terms of the entry, an arcade here at the base in terms of outdoor seating for the cafe. This area is the front of the pharmacy with a planter in front of it, and then stepping the building down as we moved further over towards the east side of the property. As it wraps around the east side of the property, there's an extension, a very low element that comes closer to the fence, but still holds the building back at the upper level, as you can see here, away from where the property line is in order to step that back. Next, please. The south side of the building has a generous canopy over the top, as well as kind of this eyebrowed window and solar shading in between, the porte cochere shading the back of the building, and then each of the windows coming across on the south side, and then as we move on to the east side of the building, having solar shading on all of them. Next, please. See in the section that there's 2 levels of parking below grade and office space working off of the central spine. You can see the setback on both sides of the building. And the next slide, please. One of the suggestions that the group had brought up in our preliminary review was we had a series of ramps in terms of coming down to the lower level, and we took the commissioner's suggestion in terms of finding a slope that we could maintain in terms of taking this all the way to the back to not raise this, but also minimize the ramps that were inside of the building. We found that to be a very helpful suggestion. Next, please. These are just details in terms of enclosure, in terms of the trash bins, enclosures, and various components around the building site, bicycle parking, et cetera, as well as the control gates. Next, please. And then these are a series of cross-sections through the building, and one of the things that was very important to us was to develop the character of the building in terms of having relief to the surfaces. So we're looking at the northwest corner of the building in terms of how we've both recessed the window but brought forward an aluminum frame that matches with the window systems in terms of articulating these pieces. This is a steel stud with a Venetian plaster that is attempting to have a mottled finish to it. These elements that are going across here are actually painted concrete, sacked and painted, so they'll be very smooth. The deck up here at this point, you're seeing spandrel glass and spandrel glass at the top and the bottom in terms of all of these. Next, please. We look at the south side, you can see the depth of the recess in terms of the shading that goes across all the way from the top to the bottom. We felt it was important, even though the building wasn't making a major step, but to carry this line around the corner of the building to lower the mass of the building to the adjacent neighborhood. You can see the overhang down at the base of this as well. Next, please. This is on the east side of the building, and this is where the step-up comes, and then the curtain wall surface that wraps around the building on the east and the northern side, as well as encloses the deck space. Next, please. And then finally, this is the west facade in terms of the recess that comes in there. And I think that one of the things that we'll probably give some consideration to as to whether we will introduce these to be in the vertical orientation in terms of better shading on the west-hand side. You can see that there's clear-story windows adjacent to the driveway in terms of the medical space that's here and the cafe at the front. Next, please. This is a detail in terms of the curtain wall and what we're looking at doing. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to take all of the verticals and express them on the outside of the building to develop a strong vertical cadence, and then using a structural silicone glazing in terms of the cross members that goes into it, that then separates the various colors of tinted glass as well as the spandrel glass that works its way up through the facade. Next, please. And simply a detail in terms of the product that we've been able to identify that will bolt directly to the aluminum frame system in terms of both the vertical and the horizontal orientation, in terms of how those panels are suspended. And they'll all be color-coded or color-matched to the aluminum system for the building. Next, please. So this walks us through the material palette, and the material palette is intended in terms of kind of introducing the earth tones, but introducing this yellow ochre color, and then finding ways to complement that color system in terms of the range of materials that we've got between the plaster surfaces, the Venetian plaster, the exposed concrete that will be sacked and painted. We have some fritted glazing, which provides the screen where some of the vision windows appear to have coloration in it. They have a frit on the inside of the glass. The curtain wall system, as it works its way down, and then that brings us over to the articulated pieces in terms of metal panel that matches the, matches the aluminum on some of these articulated positions or posts. Next, please. Lighting plan, and you can see that all of the lighting that we're looking at is either low step lights that are down at, not completely at grade level, but say a foot to 2 feet above grade, as well as bollards that are located throughout the parking area. So we get a decent spread in terms of light and safety and security, but we're not creating lighting that is going to go over the top of the walls into the neighbors. Next, please. Some detail in terms of quality of those lights. All shielded. Next, please. And then in terms of look of the signage, all the signage we're anticipating to be extruded aluminum with backlighting, not to be plastic that is illuminated within but surrounding. The doctor has asked to have the title of his family name on the building, and then the address, and any of the signage that will go onto the building will then be a similar extruded aluminum with a backlight surface. Landscape plans. There was discussion presented by staff in terms of the size of trees and where we're planning to put those trees into the parking lot in terms of the scale, as well as preserving the street trees that are there. Next, please. Details in terms of some of the additional trees and shrubs. Next, please. And then a cross-section in terms of what our landscape architect has provided for us. Amy Korn, who operates out of Pasadena, works with us quite frequently in terms of a range of these specimens. Drought tolerant. Next, please. Understory in terms of the planting. Next, please. This is the palette of the understory, as well as gravel. Next, please. And then we have some uplights that are intended to fall on the bottom of the trees in terms of creating a softer light that then diffuses back down. Next, please. And once again, you saw the video, but these are the images that were presented in terms of the appearance of the building from the street side. Next, please. From the corner looking to the southwest, and how the building steps up and steps back away from the corner. Next, please. How it grows taller and has a little more presence announcing the entry, but intentionally asymmetrical. Next, please. And then the rear of the building in terms of reducing the amount of glass so that it has a little less of a commercial feel, but a more shaded and articulated surface that faces the residential. Next, please. Another view from the rear. Next, please. And I think that's just about got it all. And we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for
Sure.
your presentation. I'll start with Commissioner Chang, if you can start with the questions.
Certainly. There may be outpatient surgery on the lower floor, and if there is to be any on the second floor, we're well aware of the need for another stair, a third stair, which will drop to the drive alley in terms of ambulance access. Yes. Absolutely, and the discussion was is that it could happen on the ground floor, and the doctor fully understands that if it happens on the second floor, we need to have that additional gurney straight stair that is going to bring people down to the to an ambulance down at the grade level. Yes, we actually have. And there's a number of applications that I've seen in various places where the spandrel glass is custom colored to the back side. And then when you're looking at the facade of the building, where there's the pixelation that has a slight variation, that is if you're familiar with the convention center downtown that has the dotted frit on the inside, it is a colored frit dotted pattern on the inside of the glass that provides that subtle variation in terms of the pixelation of each one of the colors. And we can basically choose any color we'd like to have for that. Mm-hmm. I can provide. Our intention is the signage at the top of the building on the front is intended to be what we're looking for. The signage that is on the up there, that is the tribute to the doctor's family. The signage that will occur down on the lower floor as we get tenants, we're looking to use that standard in terms of a century Gothic, aluminum extruded with a rear illumination in terms of all of those. And at this point in time, we don't know exactly who those tenants will be. I would really encourage you to set it as a condition that we come back so that we could both help control that in terms of consistency. Yes, we'll have a series of davits that are located both up on the roof as well as on the deck in terms of swing arm that goes out over the top. The only issue that I have with that currently is that the doctor is asked to have the railing along the front side of the street at 5 feet. And I have to work through with the window washing crew as to whether or not their davit lift can accept that or whether we'll have to lower that. I also need to have that discussion with the fire department in terms of access onto that deck as to how they feel about that high screen. On the curtain wall, we're going to be looking at a dark gray to silver color, not a bright silver, but a gray color, and it'll be Kynar finish. Absolutely.
Great, thank you very much. Commissioner Lopez?
No questions.
Vice Chair Sela?
No questions. I had the same issue with the signage. Not issue, I had the same concern with the signage, but it's been addressed, so nothing further. Thank you.
I do have a few questions.
Certainly.
The front of the building where you have your cafe, are you going to have lights in the ceiling for it?
Yes.
Outside? Okay. And then how many hours of shade will the sunshades create?
On the which facade?
Well, let's start with the west facade.
The west facade, as I mentioned, we're going to be considering as to whether we'll be going with a vertical orientation or even a combination of the vertical and the horizontal. We're principally looking, when we come back to the what would be the south side, our calculations are a little better there in terms of being able to predict that. We're going to be taking some sunlight onto the glass, the vision glass portion of the building in the wintertime. But once we move beyond the equinox, we're looking at principally, probably, I'm going to guess, probably 75% or more in terms of the shade on those windows.
I think that's a good way for the development to reduce their energy cost.
Mhm.
And they're done so they aesthetically look good on the building. So I think anything that you can do, so I was looking at it, I'm not a scientist, but I'm going, okay. High noon, okay.
You
they
follow
have
the
high
sun.
noon.
Exactly.
They have high noon. And then also on the lighting itself, there are some areas, the private driveway that goes out to Vanza right now, there's no lighting whatsoever, and I understand you don't have control on the building, and it is tough to try to do something there. But if you can do something there and put a gate
Along the alley surface?
yeah, on the alley surface, there are more and more homeless people that we see, and having
Understood.
a dark area that without a gate, it will invite people. The other areas I'd like you to look at lighting is both the delivery and the trash area,
Mm-hmm.
because right now that's not in your lighting plan.
Okay.
And that would help. If
Be happy.
deliveries come in the evening, people are dropping off trash in the evening, and it's away from the building itself. It just has that safety aspect. And when the sun goes down in the winter, that's something to consider. Okay, here's my pet peeve: the bottle brush tree. And that's a tree that used to be on Las Tunas Drive. And there's currently bottle brush street trees on a segment of San Marino just north of Hermosa. The canopy is so ugly, they're trimmed so poorly. This is a tree that in order to look nice, it takes a lot of work. And it's something that I'm going to ask that you maybe reconsider that lemon bottle brush. If the landscape architect and the city architect, I know there are issues with, having a tree with weaker root systems so it doesn't go into everything and the parking podium. But that's something, it's a pet peeve of mine.
Actually, I'm really glad you brought that up, is that they're not my favorite either, but for a different reason is that when the bees pollinate them, they drop all kinds of little yellow specks all over your car.
Yeah.
So I'd be more than happy to take those out and replace them with something else for your happiness as well as mine.
It's only because I think you have so many of them and they're all lined up there, and you want to have a nice canopy effect, and you want to have a tree that's drought tolerant, and there's lots of those examples. So
Be
I'm gonna
happy
put
to
that-
happy to do that.
Thank you. And I think all your other planting material looks great.
Thank
So,
you.
Those are my only questions. Staff? Yes, Ron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say that in 2 years of being city architect, I think, first of all, this was the most complete submittal that we've had in my 2 years.
Thank you.
Congratulations on that. And I think the building is beautiful, and it's been thought of 360 degrees, lots of detail, so I really appreciate that. The one thing, though, that was still in my comments that has not been addressed is the trash enclosure. I believe that they're going to require it to be roofed.
Okay.
And there needs to be disabled access to it as well. So that's something please look into.
Anything else from staff?
Yes, staff for the commission's consideration this evening would be for the building, design the project. It's a typical condition of approval that a signage criteria program be brought back separately after the tenant mix sometimes is established. Within that criteria, the materials, the installation details, the dimensions can be provided. So if the commission is acceptable to that, to treat it as a condition of approval for the project to come back with more details and to consider the building and the landscaping as proposed this evening.
No objection.
Do we have any comments from the public? Yes.
Yes, Chairwoman, we actually have two. The first one was emailed to you earlier today because it had 270-plus pages. I will be reading the comment letter. And it came via email, signed by Riza Bonachin Mohammed Zadeh, attorneys for Southwest Mountain States Regional Council for Carpenters. I'm going to time this for 3 minutes. It's quite long. On behalf of the Southwest Mountain States Regional Council of Carpenters, my office is submitting these comments for the City of San Gabriel's June 26, 2023 Design Commission hearing for the 330 West Las Tunas Drive project. The project, entitled ITER Medical Center and proposed by Robert Montano of Adept Development, involves the merger of two parcels of land totaling roughly 1.46 acres, the demolition of the existing one-story 5,032 square foot LabCorp building and the construction of a 5-story above grade, 2-story below grade, 74,750 square foot medical office building. The project is located at 330 West Las Tunas Drive in San Gabriel, California, and currently hosts a medical office building and parking lot. The request for proposals has been released to solicit qualified environmental consulting firms to perform environmental review pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act. Off-street parking, including 299 parking spaces, would be provided on the ground level and 2 subterranean levels. The site is zoned medical facilities within the Mission District specific plan and has a San Gabriel General Plan designation of medical facilities. Surrounding the site are zoning and land use designations of C1, commercial buildings to the north, MDSP R3A, which is a Mission District specific plan, Arroyo Residential, multiple family residences, and potential sensitive receptors to the south and east. Mission District specific plan C1, commercial buildings to the east, and MF restaurant buildings and medical office buildings to the west. The site can be accessed by West Las Tunas Drive to the north and De Anza Street to the west. The project requires the approval of a lot line adjustment for the merger of 2 parcels, a precise plan of design for the architectural design of building, and a master sign plan for exterior signs. The project was received for compliance with CEQA and deemed exempt pursuant to CEQA guidelines 15332, class 32. The project now appears before the DRC for a determination as to the PPD only. The LLA will be reviewed administratively by Planning and Public Works. See conditions of approval attached as Attachment A to the staff report. The SWMSRCC is a labor union representing over 63,000 union carpenters in 10 states. My 3 minutes is up.
Okay. All right. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to read this letter. Is there a way, Sam, if you can give us a 1-sentence ask? Yes. Yes, because, what,
Yes. So I didn't read the whole thing, but they have about 6 or 7 items that are enumerated here, such as the city should require the use of a local workforce to benefit the community's economic development and environment. Item 2, the California Environmental Quality Act. Let's see. Actually, let me read the conclusion. I think they wrapped it up really fairly here. A detailed and thorough review of the project's impacts must be studied, supported by substantial evidence, and mitigated against where necessary. Without this in-depth analysis and a higher standard for the quality and quantity of evidence supporting it, it is impossible to determine with a high degree of certainty the magnitude and extent of the project's environmental impacts. In light of the aforementioned, this group respectfully requests that the city deem the project not exempt from CEQA. 2, prepare and circulate a thorough project-specific EIR, which focuses heavily on the project's impacts to the environment and nearby sensitive receptors. 3, order applicant to revise the project to ensure its consistency with all applicable laws and regulations, especially those addressing human and environmental health. 4, require a local and skilled workforce for the project.
okay.
That's pretty much it.
Question. It's CEQA exempt. The other medical project on Las Tunas and Santa Anita also CEQA exempt. that also CEQA exempt?
Oh, I apologize, Chair. I did not remember the environmental determination on that
Okay.
project, but I can look it up as you go through your questions.
Because staff has already said that this project meets a threshold that doesn't, that eliminates the need to do any CEQA work.
Yes. Staff has two comments. If we're going to treat the public comments separately and not wait until the end, then staff can respond at this point. So first response being that the environmental analysis and review are project and site specific. So although there may have been one determination for one project at a particular location, the conditions may be different. And secondly, the city did consult with the experts with an environmental firm, as mentioned by Senior Planner Song, and that's Michael Baker International, and they are present this evening. If there's any questions for them, they assisted the city with the review, and also the comment letter was shared with them, so they are available to respond for any technical questions from the commission.
Maybe we can have them, well, this is all still fresh in our minds, we can have them come up and kind of talk to us a little.
Hello, good evening. My name is Francis Yao. I'm a project manager with Michael Baker International, and we prepared the CEQA exemption report.
So why is this project CEQA exempt?
Yeah, so we prepared a Class 32 infill exemption, and so under the CEQA guidelines, there are certain criteria that the project does qualify, and so an additional environmental analysis is not required. So as part of our memorandum, we did prepare substantial evidence in air quality, noise, and traffic, and all concluded that the project would result in less than significant impacts.
Question for you, Sam. We are the design commission, not the planning commission. So is it even within our purview to have this, delay this project and have the CEQA document done?
This is a discretionary process. As part of that, CEQA review is a requirement to the discretionary process. The comment letter was provided. It was reviewed by the consultant. I don't know if they have follow-up comments after reviewing it. For the city to make determinations, as mentioned by Michael Baker, there has to be a review of, again, the project specifications, the conditions, and whether or not those specifications trigger any significance level. It has been stated that analysis was conducted based on the project specifications, that the thresholds were not exceeded and therefore qualified for an exemption. If the commission has any questions as to the thresholds and the details of those analysis, again, Michael Baker can provide those clarifications. What staff received today was many comments, many pages and pages of comments with information that was cited from different case laws and different types of projects that may not be specific to this particular project. Staff's and the CEQA consultant's recommendation is the exemption determination. However, if there are any concerns, comments that the commission has, then those would have to be addressed this evening.
Raymond, you're probably, on the commission side, you're probably most versed in dealing with this type of situation. So I'm going to look at you for two ways, in two hats. One is your former chair and 30-plus years on the design commission, design review commission, and also as an architect, if you can help us with this.
Thank you for that comment. I really appreciate it. I think our charge here for this particular design review body is to look at the project in the merit of the design quality and the fitness of the site, the code requirement, and does it fit in our city compatibility, color, citizen quality of life, all of that, landscaping, everything else that we have looked at over the years. And as to the planning requirement, whether we meet the CEQA requirement or not, since the applicant had retained a environmental firm and they are qualified to make that determination, and because of that, the city planning staff and manager had agreed with that founding, and that's why we are now looking at it with a CEQA SEM project. So tonight we look at the application that come in front of us with the city architect confirming that it's probably one of the most comprehensive projects that come to us with every consideration there is. And also this body had looked at the project, visited the site, understand the project. I remember this project came to us maybe 2.5 years ago, maybe right before the pandemic. I remember seeing this project. And it's good to see it come back with all these questions answered at that time. So I think we can, based on that, I think this body, we can act on it based on what we find. And if the general public letter has enough evidence to say that, well, they still have any question, I think they can send it to planning staff, and then our city attorney can look at it at that point and see if there's anything that the consultant have missed or misinterpreted.
I like that suggestion because, you know, the voting commissioner members, you know, I don't know who has had time to read that. We had a larger packet than normal to review, and reading 200-plus page letter is a little difficult, and I see we have someone else there. So I like the concept of having the city attorney review everything with the letter and respond to that, because our purview, as we talked about, is more the exterior. And yes, sir.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. Eddie Torres of Michael Baker. I was the manager of the technical studies for the CEQA document, and I just want to kind of boil down the letter for you from 295 pages to 7 pages. So if you look at the comment letter, there's only about 7 or 10 pages of comments. The rest of it is an attachment from a study from 2021 regarding the potential benefits of having a local workforce and an air quality model output and resumes of their consultant. Overall, the issues they brought up were that the project should employ a local workforce, which isn't an environmental topic per se. It's a benefit, but it's not an environmental topical area. The second area they brought up was that the project is not subject to an exemption, which we went through the criteria for an infill exemption. As part of that, you have to have certain criteria, and you have to analyze impacts on traffic, air quality, and noise. We did technical studies for that and found that there were no impacts with the project and no mitigations required. So at that point, we go into the final determination step and found the project is indeed subject to an exemption and not subject to a mitigated negative declaration or an EIR. And finally, they stipulated that the exemption should have gone to public review, and per the CEQA guidelines, it is not subject to going to public review. So based upon a review of the comment letter, we addressed all the topical areas. And typically, this letter is one that comes in at the 9th hour at a public hearing for a labor union to encourage the applicant to employ a labor workforce from a union. So we're comfortable in the results of the exemption that there were no impacts of the project upon the environment, and that the exemption was the appropriate course of action for CEQA exemption.
I still think it's best to have the city attorney respond to this. No? Sam?
if the commission takes action tonight, it is accepting the recommended determination. This comment letter it's public record. It can absolutely be forwarded to the city attorney's office in case a response of some kind is warranted. But staff can absolutely share that with the city attorney's office.
And if it's made a condition, does a project come back if the city attorney deems something? Can we reverse our stance, or at this point, we put this on hold, hear from the attorney, and then come back?
The city attorney's office would not make a determination on the document. It's a matter of whether or not information is available or unavailable. If the commission takes action tonight, it is based on the recommendation that's before the commission.
So just to clarify too, on the CEQA guidelines, so you have different levels of CEQA clearance. So what they're saying in the letter is that we didn't do CEQA, we did do CEQA. So you have 3 levels. You have an exemption, you have a mitigated negative declaration, the EIR, and on a project this case, the exemption does provide more legal defensibility versus a mitigated negative declaration because it is exempt per the criteria that we specified. And as such, if the commission decides to approve the project, there is a notice that is filed with the county clerk that gives a 30-day challenge period per se with that. So it did go through CEQA, it did go through the review process, and did go the proper channels.
Commissioner Lopez?
Yeah, it's kind of, unfortunately, it seems like you've been ambushed, but we've been ambushed as well. And I haven't had a chance to read the document. How credible it is or not, I don't know. How credible your word or your study is, I don't know. And that's the essence of the ambush. Within our purview, I don't believe a lot of these technicalities are within our purview, as you were stating. Nonetheless, the decision to go forward or not, I think it would be preemptive or premature to the extent that whatever we may decide on colors and what we're asking for material palettes and things of that sort, how that impacts the environment, I don't know. Whether this letter has validity or any valid points, I don't know. If it were only a request to use certain contract labor, or that would not be within our purview, obviously. I'm concerned about the how things are kind of happening. No one's had a chance to really look at it or even address what the issues are or what the concerns are. And I'm not diminishing your credibility or your word. I fully have faith that you are being upfront and truthful. Nonetheless, there is an opposing view. It's just in my opinion, I have to treat this as a concern, as if it was a next door neighbor, a certain project or something, bringing up concerns or issues or anything along those lines. That's my opinion.
And we do have other public comments, so I think let's hear what the other public comments are, and then we can talk about this after the public hearing is closed. Thank you.
The second public comment came from Melissa Guerrero and Jason Golday from Dianza Street. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. My husband and I live down Dianza Street and provide comments based on being avid walkers and boosters for San Gabriel. I'm a landscape designer and my husband is a music educator. We're both community-minded and love the quality of life here and think the following comments will maintain and enhance that livability. 1. We urge the project to have a 12-foot landscaped setback from the sidewalk. San Gabriel has lovely big trees and foliage that make our neighborhood calming. We need more trees and plants for thermal cooling to battle urban heat island effect, which will exacerbate with climate change. The nicest private properties on Las Tunas have a landscaped setback. This landscape gives back to the community. Number 2, speaking of giving back to the community, the project could do more in this regard. There's an outdoor cafe only for patrons. Currently, residents can walk through the alley and parking lot on the weekends, which is a quieter place to walk our dog than on Las Tunas. How can the project give back to the community more? Possibly keep the alley and parking lot open and lock the subterranean garage after working hours. Could the surface parking lot be designed in a multi-purpose way so there is community uses on the weekends, like a basketball hoop or a parking or a walking path along the planted buffer? Or could the project move the cafe to the first floor and have it open to the public as well? The 12-foot landscape setback could be considered another way to be generous to the public as well. I do appreciate the amount of glass, which will make the large building less imposing. Third, lastly, our community will have 2 projects being built on Las Tunas, possibly at the same time. How will this generate noise in our community, which is mostly made up of multifamily units where low to middle income families live? We would appreciate it if the city can find ways to minimize construction noise from both of these projects. Can they be built in the same area so we don't have to deal with 2 to 3 years of construction noise, but maybe just 1 year? Can their schedules be restricted to 9 to 5, Mondays to Fridays? Any ideas to mitigate the construction noise would be so appreciated.
Thank you. Any other comments? That's it. Okay. Thank you so much. So it is now 9:17 p.m. and public comment on this item is now closed. Staff, do you have any additional comments on this?
No additional comments.
Okay. We have the applicant has a chance for rebuttal.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So, thank you for all your comments, and as we had mentioned, Kip, we appreciate the conditions that you placed on the project. I do want to speak to not necessarily the letter and the communication, but really the analysis that has been done by Michael Baker, and a little bit of the confusion. And obviously, you're welcome to discount me as the applicant. Prior to my role here, it has been 25 years in the public sector, in planning, in economic development, and redevelopment. A Class 32 categorical exemption under CEQA doesn't mean you are exempt from CEQA. It is a different process through CEQA. Under CEQA, there are multiple thresholds and tiers by which projects are studied. Some of them are exemptions, which means you perform a series of technical studies to determine if there is an impact. If there is an impact, you're raised to another tier, and that would be typically a categorical exemption. Beyond a categorical exemption is a mitigated negative declaration. First a negative declaration, then a mitigated negative declaration, and if you still trip thresholds through that process, you're bound to an entire large environmental impact report. That is a tier of study. All of that is within CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act. When the technical studies for this project were performed, it was determined by the engineers that it did not trip serious thresholds to create what is technically called a significant impact. Doesn't mean that construction doesn't create impacts. It means that there weren't impacts that achieve a certain threshold that would be deemed significant as defined by CEQA. So CEQA, again, is a roadmap, if you will, on how projects ought to be analyzed. And they go along the way and they check the boxes as you go through. Again, this project didn't reach the merits of the impacts under the technical studies to go into a negative declaration, to go into a mitigated negative declaration, to go into an environmental impact report. It was kept within 5 conditions of a class 32 categorical exemption. And I'll recite those for you now real quick. The project is consistent with the applicable general plan designation and all applicable general plan policies, as well as applicable zoning designation and regulations. 2, the proposed development occurs within city limits on a project site of no more than 5 acres substantially surrounded by urban uses. 3, the project site has no value as habitat for endangered, rare, or threatened species. 4, approval of the project would not result in any significant impacts related to traffic noise, air quality, or water quality. Those were the technical studies that were performed, and we were deemed to not achieve a significant impact. The final tier is that the site can be adequately served by required utilities and public services. Part of this analysis also was to determine whether or not we had sufficient sewer capacity in the streets, water capacity, and all other utilities for the area. So based on those 5 criteria, we're deemed to be we are deemed to fall within a categorical exemption or a class 32 exemption, and therefore, that's how we found ourselves here. We're still bound by CEQA. We're still analyzed under CEQA. We've just reached a threshold that we don't go to an environmental impact report or some larger study. If this was a 24-story tower, for example, and we created loads and loads of traffic that caused traffic jams across 12 different intersections in the city at all hours of the day, that would require something like an environmental impact report. And to that, there would be conditions that says we would have to either reduce the project, change the project, or make community-wide improvements to improve the traffic issues. We didn't reach those, and that's how we're here. So I understand if the commission, your focus is on design and not the environmental stuff. I understand if you want to go to the city attorney for clarification, but from the standpoint of Michael Baker Associates having performed all of the analysis and ourselves performing these services and completing projects throughout Southern California, this is where we are today. So again, I appreciate all of your comments. As I had mentioned, it's been a real pleasure working with staff. They've helped us develop a very comprehensive package. We've studied a lot of analysis with Public Works, with Fire Department, and everyone, and getting all of the right circulation and configurations down. And we hope that you can move this on to the next step so we can begin construction as soon as we get through building permits. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. So, at this time, it's for us to discuss and deliberate about the project and vote if we so deem so. So, before we go on to asking for a motion, I'm going to just kind of list kind of the things we talked about tonight. First of all, we talked about bringing back the signage program for this project along with the color samples. So that's something that we talked about as a condition for approval. We also talked about changing out the bottle brush tree and having the trash enclosure with the roof and making sure the trash enclosure is handicap accessible. Did I miss any points here? Okay. So those are the design points, excluding this, that we talked about. I also want to mention that this plaintiff, the author of this letter, can also file an appeal. So that could be done. Because I still think that even with Robert's explanation, this is not our purview. And even the call to have local people work the job is not necessarily our purview. Our purview is how the building looks and feels and how it blends with the community. And looking at this building, I remember when the other building was built. I remember when there was a movie theater there with beautiful doors that was torn down for this other thing that was built, this medical office building in 1997. So when we look at building things, we want to build things that are going to last. There was a former planner who used to say, building tomorrow's blight today. So I think with our purview is looking how we can build something that's going to withstand the test of time. And when we look at environmental issues, tearing down buildings that were built a short time ago that cannot be adaptively reused, that's the worst thing you can do. And now there's state laws that make the developer recycle a lot of those things. So, that being the case, I'd like to see what the other commissioners think, how they want to move forward with this. So, Commissioner Chen?
I felt the same way. I think the project in front of us has met all the steps that the city staff and the planning department review. What's in front of us is a use that is in line with the general plan, that is in line with the need of the city and benefit our citizens. And I am prepared to work on the voting and vote on it based on what's in front of us. If one of the letter that came in, that felt otherwise, they still have within that appeal period to seek other variants to look at it and say, well, it does not meet their vision, and there is a way that they can stop that. So I am prepared to hold on.
Yeah, a couple of things. I appreciate the rebuttal, although that one study that was presented to the city and the city staff, it all comes down to an opinion based on whatever expertise you have. Nonetheless, an opinion. It does not become fact until it's litigated, in a sense. So, and that goes back to my point. The second concern from the people behind the building, they outlaid a number of things that they have enjoyed in the neighborhood, that they will be losing, which is something to the extent within our purview as well. I've heard our city staff also say that it's discretionary, our purview to a certain extent. I continue with this. So if you want to talk about that one neighbor, it becomes an environmental impact, not in the sense, in the technical sense about smog, traffic, things of that sort, although they would be losing those things, and that person is requesting perhaps a dual use or multiple use for the community, kids skateboarding or something along those lines. But I would get that also that creates liability to a certain extent to expand the facilities in that sense. I would like, in my opinion, for the city attorney to look at some of these things, or for staff to review again the report in contrast to what has come in. And I'm kind of curious. We didn't get a chance to read it, but you guys did, correct? Yeah, it's a yes, no, yes or no.
I guess I was going to answer.
Okay.
I read it.
Yeah. So I'm concerned about that. I'm really concerned. That we didn't get a chance to read something like that. Obviously, the timing, came in. And that's what I was saying is by ambush. So I'm not prepared to move on. And if we move on, then my vote would have to be a no.
Just normally, an EIR is not within the design commission's purview. And that's what I am questioning. And these individuals have the right, like anyone else, to appeal whatever decision. If we vote for it or against it, they can appeal it. And the burden isn't on us, but how do we feel about the project? Because this environmental stuff normally doesn't get approval from the design commission.
I completely agree, but it's been brought up.
It has been brought up.
And I understand it's not within perhaps all of our scope. If we sign off on certain things, so we're talking materials and things of that sort, what sort of look, impact, who knows? You guys were talking about glass, the color of the glass, does that have an environmental impact? I don't know. You can get, down to those, down to the, I guess, to that menial level. What I'm saying is that there is a concern, albeit the impact that this will have if it didn't comply. So my question is, if you know that something is potentially non-compliant, wouldn't it behoove you to then get a further opinion or research it or have the staff research it a little further to feel that comfort that you're not voting on something that may be out of compliance to begin with? That is my opinion.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Sela?
Yes, so this isn't the first time I've had the opportunity to review this project. So I have had time to understand it in detail. And I think that for the effort that the applicant has put in, the level of thoughtfulness and detail, that at the very least they deserve a vote. So I will be motioning to approve this project today.
Before we look to voting on this project, I'd like to go back to a comment that I made regarding the gate on Danza. And this is in response to the second letter that we received from the neighbor on Danza. I'd like to ask that the developer, and working with the city, contact this person. And if there's not an issue with homelessness and security, then look at ways to have that first gate, no gate right there at Danza, and looking at some type of pedestrian access at that second gate, because these neighbors see how that parking lot has been an asset for them to go out and walk. Knowing the neighborhood, I think San Gabriel is park deficient, but I don't want the development to create a park for them. But if just having a pedestrian gate for the neighbor, if that's something that would make their livability an enhancement, I think that's something that the development team should look at. So with that, I'd like to see if there is a motion to move forward with this project or deny this project.
Yeah, this is, oh, go ahead, Raymond. This is Vice Chair Salo. I motion to approve planning case PPD 21-008 with the conditions of approval that discussed today.
Roll call, please.
Chair Romo, Vice Chair Salo,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang, and Commissioner Lopez.
Oh.
The vote is 3 yes and 1 no. The motion passes by 3 votes. Thank you.
And we need a break? Okay, we will take a 10-minute break, 5-minute break before we continue. I want to thank everyone in the audience, the applicant, the letters that we received, and the commissioners and city staff. This is a little more complicated than we're used to, and it was a good discussion. So we will come back in 5 minutes. Thank you. I have been the voice of opposition before in this body, so. But my maiden name is Lopez. Okay, we're back from our break. It is now time to address our last public hearing item, E, 205 East Valley Boulevard, planning case number PPD 21-002, precise plan of design, applicant Valley SG Land Plus LLC. And Anthony will be doing our presentation.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So the last item before you tonight is a request for a precise plan of design for a proposed project at the address 205 East Valley Boulevard, planning case number PPD 21-005. Okay, so the project site is located on the northwest corner of East Valley Boulevard and Palm Avenue. It does exclude the corner parcel, so it kind of makes up an L-shaped. So previously, these were actually two separate parcels, but a lot line adjustment application was submitted and approved by Planning and the Public Works Department to merge the two parcels in March of 2022. The two lots combined for a total of 30,267 square feet, or approximately 0.69 acres, and is currently vacant as shown on the aerial map above. The property is zoned MU/T, which is the mixed-use transit-oriented development within the Valley Boulevard specific plan. It has a general land use designation of commercial specific plan. So at the June 28th, 2021 meeting, the Design Review Commission was actually presented this project as a preview item to provide feedback to the applicant. So some of that feedback is summarized here on the slide above. And I'm going to touch on this a little bit because we actually have the applicant architect here who has prepared a separate presentation and will go into depth about how he addressed each of these items. But basically, the elevation needed some work. It had a busy look or a busy feel to it, so the applicant did revise the application to kind of minimize that. He did address how the parking for the residential and commercial components would work, as well as having that access to the elevators for both residential and commercial on site. One of the questions that came up was how the commercial component, specifically the proposed coffee shop, was going to have pedestrian access. That was a large concern, and that was something that the applicant has worked through. Also addressing the blank walls, you'll see on some of the studies, some of the renderings that the applicant has provided that he has addressed that, as well as addressing the residential entrance/shelter component. So this image, both of them are from the valley frontage on the south elevation. The image to the left was what was presented to the Design Review Commission at the preview meeting, and the image to the right is what is being presented tonight. You can kind of see some of those items that were addressed, and like I mentioned, the applicant will go into more detail with that afterwards. The proposed project was reviewed against the MU/T development standards in the Valley Boulevard specific plan and found to meet all of those requirements as shown above. The MU/T development standards are listed in the column in the middle, while the proposed project is shown on the right and shown to be consistent and in compliance. It's a little hard to see this, but this is the proposed site plan of the project. So this shows that it's going to have the commercial aspect on the bottom floor with residential on the at-grade ground floor, as well as subterranean parking down below. One of the other aspects that was that is going to be talked about by the applicant is the fact that some of the parking, it's not shown on the this presentation, but some of the parking is tandem parking. So one of the requirements and conditions of approval is the applicant has to prepare a valet parking plan to address that. So this is a couple of renderings, elevations, one from the north facing the residential property to the north, and one on the east along Palm Avenue. This is what the proposed project is looking like. The project was reviewed against the general plan and found to be in compliance or consistent with the general plan based on the following goals, which is land use goal 1.9, economic goal 4.1, community design goal 10.1, community design goal 10.4, and community design goal 10.13. Since this project was within the Valley Boulevard specific plan, it was also reviewed against a specific plan and found to be consistent with the four following guidelines. So as a part of this project, this was reviewed for compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. As such, an initial study was prepared for the project by a city-selected environmental consultant who just so happens to be Michael Baker International, who is here to speak on the project. So what they did was they did determine the project's potential impact on the environment. And after the initial study, it was determined that the proposed project may have a significant impact on the environment. So therefore, it went to that next tiered process, which was a mitigated negative declaration, as well as a mitigation monitoring and reporting program that was prepared. So that has been included as part of your attachments tonight, because that is something that is going to be approved and included for us to look at during building plan check process and during the inspections of the proposed project. Noticing was required for this proposed project in the following ways. Mailed notices to the property owners and tenants within the radius, a notice posted at the job site, which is shown above, as well as having the notice posted in the issue of the San Gabriel Sun on June 15th of this year. And lastly, agendas posted in the required locations such as City Hall, Post Office, Public Library, and on our website. So it is with that staff recommends that the, again, Design Review Commission adopt a resolution of the Design Review Commission of the City of San Gabriel, California, approving planning case number PPD 21-005 for a precise plan to design, a mitigated negative declaration, and a mitigation monitoring and reporting program to allow for a 4-story mixed-use development at 205 East Valley Boulevard, subject to the recommended conditions of approval. This will conclude staff's presentation. Staff's available for any questions, and as mentioned, we do have the CEQA consultant here, as well as a project applicant who has prepared a separate PowerPoint presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Commissioner Lopez, do you have any questions for staff?
No, right now.
Vice Chair Sala?
None for staff, thank you.
Commissioner Chin? No questions for staff.
Thank you.
To the applicant?
Madam Chair and the members of the Commission, good evening. My name is Yang Kao, 235 East Main Street, Alhambra. I'm the architect for this project. And I'm just going to quickly go over the Commission's previous concerns and explain how those concerns are addressed. the staff just went over this, so I'm not going to repeat it. The first one was the obvious accessibility issue that we had the last time. The commission correctly pointed out that there are serious access issues, even without the addition of the coffee shop. The commission feels strongly that an elevator should be provided to bring people from P1 up to the ground floor. So we added we added an elevator exclusively for the commercial. And as you can see on the diagrams on the left, it illustrated that if we add a coffee shop component, it totally had no access from the accessible parking, and the service of the trash obviously would have to be carried along the sidewalk. So with that, we made adjustments to the layout, creating a exit passageway to provide both the wheelchair access from the accessible parking to both tenant spaces, and also for the trash services. The circular area is where we made an amendment, made a revision to add an additional elevator. Then another big concern the commission had was that the articulation of the building was too busy, too cluttered. And it came in two ways. One, it had too many colors or patterns of the material. And it also came the way that it's been divided. So addressing the first issue, that too many colors and the materials, we had 5 stucco colors and 5 metal panel patterns and colors. So and that doesn't count, that has not counted the CMU on the ground floor. There's also a small portion of the cement board siding, which is only used in the walkway area, nowhere else in the building. So if we just look at it, the materials that are used for the general upper stairs residential units, there are 5 stucco colors and 5 metal patterns, so there's a total of 10. Working with city architect, in 2 rounds of streamlining, we kind of brought it down to a total of 4 now, 3 stucco colors and just 1 metal panels. So that's on the area of the number of colors and materials that we did. In terms of the way that the different colors of stuccos and metal panels are used, the division previously was pretty fragmented. There's a lot of small divisions, and adding to that is that the division lines came in both floor level and also window sill, window header. That's just adding more sense of business and colorness. So with that, the articulation of the areas of different colors has been much more streamlined. And that brought up to the issue of the facade on Palm Avenue. The commission's comment was that the treatment overused the reviews, and the review in general is not a reliable tool in the construction. A lot of times they are ignored by the contractors. The Commission also have a concern with the mixture or extensive combination between the metal panel and the stucco, given the metal panel thickness, with the standard 1.5 inch metal panel, that you would create a 1 inch disparity in overall thickness between the stucco and the metal panel, and then obviously not only complicate the construction, but also adds to that already busy and crowdedness. So again, working with the city architect, we have come up with a much simplified articulation of that. The lower level, I mean, if we there's a market difference between this new scheme and the previous one, in that in the previous scheme there's a 4-story element, and the original idea was that since this was right across street from the owner's Sheraton Hotel, there's a desire to try to kind of fancy up this elevation, albeit the frontage is quite narrow. So we try to kind of use this almost, kind of treat this almost like a mural, giving it a little bit more powerful, stately image. On the revised one, you can see that we have sacrificed that 4-story element. And that is not because of the simplification, but because of another reason, and we will get to that in a minute. So the next concern that the Commission previously had was that there were blank, pretty big blank CMU walls that are facing the neighbor's parking lot. And actually there's another one facing the west as well. I appreciated that the city architects taking the time to actually did a sketch to communicate an idea more concretely to us. And we took that idea and kind of simplified it a little bit and come up with this solution. We pick 3 tones from that company's CMU, the light gray, darker gray, and the parchment color, and just articulate it in a way that more or less coordinated with upper stories. And we carry this throughout the building. And this is the west side, that is previous scheme, just a blank wall. And now with that concept of articulation, this is the revised west elevation. Parking management, I think a lot of that concern that the Commission had was out of that inaccessibility. So after we solved that, that problem is kind of resolved itself. Granted that the owners still need to come up with some tandem parking attendant plans with the city that's, just like any other projects that has tandem parking. But other than that, the previously that we were contemplating curb, valet, and all that becomes an option. This is purely an option, not a solution anymore. In addition, the city architect brought up some good observations, and one is that the entry to the residential lobby wasn't articulated. So when one passed through the gateway, walk along the walkway, one really won't have any idea where the entry is. So that is something obviously an issue, because being a preliminary plan, so we have not got to a point to articulate that. The second, both the second and third actually are related. The second was a suggestion that some of the element, some of the treatment in that residential walkway should be extended to the Palm Avenue, so that that residential entry can be made more prominent. And the third item is just to reinforce that the gateway that we had. And yeah, here, the first issue is pretty straightforward, that we indented that entry to the lobby and then provided a 7 feet deep projected canopy. 2 feet is in a recess area and 5 feet projected into that 15-foot setback area. There was previous scheme, and then this is the revised scheme with the indentation and canopy. With the return of some element from the gateway, there was a return. As you can see, that white stucco on the lower right corner, just a little bit, that was a return from that walkway. And there was a gateway, but that gateway was really, pretty obscure, hardly have its presence there. So given that idea reminded by the city architect, it also came to mind that some of the commissioners might remember that we paid a lot of attention to create a larger element to bring the corner one-story building into a pretty harmonious scale to transition it to this 4-story. And we, in this case, we not only neglected that gateway, but we also forgot about doing the same thing to the residential neighbor on the north side. So with those two in mind, this is what we did. We returned that element from the residential walkway much further to make it a much stronger presence. And we also created a canopy over that gateway to reinforce that presence of it. And the more presence that gateway has, the more role it would play to better transition the scale down to the 1-story and 2-story apartment buildings on the right. So this is a perspective view looking at both the neighboring building and that, with previous one, given the absence of that gateway, it's automatic, the reference of scales automatically goes to that 4-story element. With this revised one and a much stronger presence of the gateway, that 1-story scale kind of tied to that 2-story apartment building with a 1-story front end fairly nicely. And this is looking at it from a different angle, the previous scheme, and this is the revised scheme. So and that concludes my presentation, and hope that our effort in addressing that both previous concerns that the commission has and the city architect have much improved this project. Thank you, and I'd be glad to take any questions from the commission.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation and for going with each step to see those before and afters. So I'm going to start with our commissioners. Commissioner Lopez, do you have any questions for the applicant?
No questions.
Commissioners, Vice Chair Sala?
No questions.
Commissioner Cheng?
Comprehensive, thank you for walking us through the whole process, and I don't have any particular question for you.
Okay. So, do we have any public comments on this? Okay.
Yes, Chairwoman, we received one. It's from Mr. William Feng. Address is 1620 Palm Avenue. And he writes, my property is literally right next to proposed mixed-use development. Given the major fire that occurred at this development construction site, I'm very concerned with the continued development of this site. The current site plan is extremely close to a residential area and comes up right next to my property without any sort of buffer zone or appropriate setback. Has due evaluation or consideration been given to consider all the risks the development will pose to the immediate residential area and my property? The safety, health, environmental risks are significant. It was only through luck that mine and other properties did not suffer major catastrophic damage in the last fire. The fire occurred on a night and day with misty drizzle conditions and no wind. In the immediate aftermath of the fire, I picked up huge amounts of charcoal and ember on my property. I'm still in the middle of getting professional assessment for the extent of damages to my property. I stress and implore the Commission to give serious and diligent consideration to the continuation of this project. At a minimum, proper design and appropriate requirements should be implemented to eliminate or substantially mitigate risks such as safety, health, environmental, etc. That's it.
And just for clarification, the fire was on another site, not this site. So just wanted to make that very clear. Anthony, do you have anything? I see you're standing up.
No, Madam Chair, I was actually just going to say the same thing. I did look up the address of the commenter, and he does live next to the site that recently did catch fire. I believe it was probably just a mistake of, he thought that item was coming back to the commission. So no, it's referring to a different address altogether.
Okay. And when I look at the standards, this project meets the rear setback standards and all the other standards.
Correct. And also something that I wanted to add was I did anticipate hearing from some of the residents because of the close vicinity to the fire, and a lot of them were probably going to get this notice. So I did have police and fire look at this project over again, and they actually added a condition of approval, number 88, which basically I could read that out loud. It says, for additional security measures, the police and/or fire department may require additional security measures during the construction phase of a project. This will be determined during the pre-construction meeting that will take place before construction commences. So that's just to address any kind of
Preventative.
correct.
Thank you so much. Anything else, Jackie? Okay. So it is now 10:11. The time for public comment on this item is now closed. Any other comments from staff on this item? Okay. So now it is, let's see. Applicant, do you have any other comments to rebut?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So now it's time for the commission to discuss this project. Commissioner Lopez?
I have a question for staff. So does the person that lives, that wrote, does live next to this project or does not?
Actually, Jackie, do you mind pulling up the, my presentation? I could just kind of show you a vicinity of where located. Okay, thank you. Oh, okay. Okay, so of course, this is where the project site is. So the site that caught fire recently, a couple weeks ago, was 300 East Valley. It's located across the street here. So the applicant, sorry, the commenter with the public comment, they live adjacent to that property. So they do live across the street.
Okay, so it's kind of like what if, the building,
Yeah, well, I
10
think
blocks from
they,
here catches on fire and an amber flies and lands on my property.
right, well, I think the comment was pertaining to the fact that they thought that this item was coming back to commission tonight. So they were making comments on that item, which is not the case. But regardless, something like this,
Yeah,
of course, we hope that doesn't happen again, but that's why we have those conditions of approval and that added condition to address it or prevent anything like that from happening again.
Yeah, no, I was just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
That was my only question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Sela?
No questions, just a comment. I appreciate that the architect is trying to break up this mass to prevent it from looking like one giant block. And so, I do appreciate that, all the different forms and breaking up of the masses. But at the same time, last time around, it was 5 different metal textures and 5 different stucco textures. That was a lot going on. So I think the design is much improved with the reduction of textures and materials and colors. So I do think it's a market improvement. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Chang?
Thank you, Chair. I remember seeing this project a couple of years ago also, and I remember those comments made by the commission, and I appreciate the architect and took this seriously and worked with city architect to refine the project. I think it's all good now. I just want to make one comment that being right next to the Sheraton Hotel, I remember when we approved the Sheraton Hotel, we spent a lot of time and effort and try to get it so that the project looked beautiful at night. So just a comment made to the architect is that pay attention to the lighting, especially during the proper lighting, so that the project will look correctly, echoing how Sheraton will look like. So we don't want a bright building, but yet you need to provide the proper lighting for your public area and also around the area. So that's what we comment I think. Other than that, I think it's important.
Great. I'd like to echo that comment. I think especially on Valley Boulevard where you're under those columns, it's a great palette right now. It's a little dark, and that needs to lighten up. A lot of people, I'm not going to recommend the color of the comment, but I'm going to ask that maybe you work with the city architect on that Valley Boulevard facade and look at using illumination going up and down or something on that facade. When you look at what was done on Palm with the vertical wood and then the gateway with that vertical look, that brings the building down to a pedestrian level, and there's that you can relate to that building as you're walking by it. I think the Valley Boulevard frontage is a little hard, and it's not as warm as at Palm, so I'd like to have you work with the city architect on that. And then, in looking at the landscape plan, there was a tree called up. It's listed as a smaller vertical tree, and it was a Calvary pear tree. I'm not a landscape architect, but when I see these plans, I look up each tree that people are proposing if I'm not familiar with it. And that tree is described as small. And when you look at it on the plan, you see it smaller than the Chinese pistache trees, which look larger. When in fact, that pear tree can grow 50 feet tall, and that Chinese pistache is 35 feet tall. So I'd like you to work with the landscape architect and to make sure what you want and that you select the right type of trees for that rhythm that you want to create. Because there's nothing worse than getting a tree that's going to be very big and cutting the top of it, and that's not how the tree's natural beauty is supposed to be. And so those are my comments. I don't have comments on the mitigated neg deck, but that's something that was in our packet. I did have a chance to review it, but as the document is called, a mitigated negative declaration, that's something that there are some things that could be potential environmental hazards, but there are steps that can be taken to mitigate those things. Do you have anything else to say? I'm looking at the Michael Baker. If you, someone on your team, if you have something, and I think this is important because we had the other discussion just prior to this.
No additional comments on the mitigated negative declaration. As staff mentioned, it does include a component called a mitigation monitoring program, which is implemented during construction to make sure that there's no effects upon the environment or the surrounding neighbors.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, so with that, I brought up a couple of items regarding the Valley Boulevard facade and also the landscaping and the tree selection. I'd like to see if we can put those as conditions on this project and have the development team work with the city architect and the landscape architect to refine those two. Is there someone who's willing to make a motion on this project with those two things as a condition?
Chair, do you mind to add the lighting also?
Yes, and the lighting. Yes, 3 items. The lighting, so it's not overly done, but thoughtful, kind of to highlight the project just as the Sheridan is highlighted and not overkill, get that happy medium point. Thank you.
So with that said, I'll go with the motion to approve application number PPD 21-002, precise panel design 205, detailed worldwide, per staff report or condition, plus the 3 conditions that was mentioned in this meeting.
Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Roll call, please.
Chair Romo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Salo,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang, and Commissioner Lopez.
Yes.
The vote is 4-0, motion passed.
Thank you. Now we go to item 4 on our agenda, comments from the planning manager.
No updates, Madam Chair.
comments, and conference and meeting reports. Each commissioner may address the commission on public matters of general information and/or concern. This time is also for the commissioners to report on any conferences or meetings they've attended. Commissioner Lopez?
Nothing to report.
Commissioner Chang?
Thank you. Glad to be back. Thank you for it.
Good to have you back. Vice Chair Sela?
No, I just want to say welcome back, Commissioner Chang, and you look great.
Welcome back, welcome back. I have no other comments. With that, we go to item number 6, adjournment. We're going to adjourn tonight's meeting to the regular meeting of the Design Review Commission on Monday, July 24th at 6:30 p.m. City Hall, 425 South Mission Drive, 2nd floor, City Council Chambers. Thank you all.
I think it's still coming down.